Every time he went to the hospital, like, oh, it's getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, and at least hopefully, other people hear that and take that to heart. Yeah, it's really sad. I don't know who convinced that was the right thing to do.
About a month before he died, he said, I don't know how to treat pancreatic cancer, but I know what I did was the wrong thing.
By eating the wrong thing, it's not a little thing. It's not just like, oh, they're a bit overweight. They're very sick. And they're getting illnesses that they shouldn't have to have.
How about the people that eat a primary carbohydrate diet and just white knuckle every day with their hunger?
Good to see you, man. It's it's been a while since we spoke last time, but I definitely wanted to talk to you more about just the X3 bar and just exercise fitness in general. Last time we spoke, a lot of people got quite a lot out of that, and a lot of people have been asking for an encore, so I appreciate you making some time to come back on.
100%. And we'll do it a third time if people still have more questions.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So fire John, away.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into it, talking about the X3 bar. So Anthony's been using it for a little while now and is doing the 30-day challenge. John, how did this come about, and what's the purpose of the X3 bar versus just going to the gym?
So I had been going to the gym for 20 years, and I really didn't get much out of it.
You didn't get much out of it, so you weren't in good shape, or?
I mean, I was lean for a little while, but that had less to do with the gym and more to do with my diet. And I played rugby in university, so that keeps you lean.
Yeah,
like sprinting and stopping. Like, you don't see a lot of fat rugby players. So I was, how do I say it without totally trashing weightlifting? I mean, I guess I was sore on a regular basis. I really didn't gain a lot of muscle. When I was playing for a semi-pro team, I had some testicular damage. So then I got a prescription for testosterone replacement therapy. And so this was at 27 years old. And then I was like, I don't really need rugby in my life anymore. I'm a much better fan anyway. Like, like I'm pretty sure, like, Anthony, you went like All-American, right?
Yeah,
not me. Yeah, I was just, I was there for, like, my university experience was much more about, I guess it was about academics. I did pretty well. And then I liked my fraternity, and rugby was just something that was like, I'm tough, I can do this. But I wasn't planning on like a future in rugby. So like last talk we had, Anthony was going on and on about all the stuff he did in rugby, and I'm identifying with like the first story and then the second story.
and then I'm playing for America.
It's like, bro, like, you lost me. So So it was certainly a fun experience, and I love the game. But I was way more interested in keeping my teeth and my face intact than I was winning games. And at a low level, you'll do fine in rugby with that attitude. At a high level, you'll do awful because the other guys, and also, coincidentally, after I graduated, I did some research on different bone density and bone structure of different races of people. Who's best at rugby? So like New Zealanders, Islanders, the gauge of bone, like if I grab onto my radius bone right here, just pinch it, it's maybe 2 centimeters thick. You'd find a guy that was smaller than me on the field, shorter than me. He would have thinner bones, you'd think. But if he was from Tonga or Samoa, it was like the dude had rebar in his arms. It was like you grab on his wrist, and I'd be like, let me see that for a second. And I remember thinking, I'm writing a paper about this, and I did. It was an interesting, like, different races of people are just designed for high impact collisions, and others are not. So like white dudes, really not. But if you got some Islander in you, then you're good. So that was part of my reason. But Then when I got out of school, and to answer your question, my mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis. And so and this is where OsteoStrong came from, I looked at how I could treat her bone loss. She didn't want to take any of the drugs that were out there, and I didn't blame her. I read some of the side effects, and I was like, God, like the side effects are worse than having osteoporosis, which we see all the time with different side effects of medications. And also, as I got into research, I met a lot of researchers that told me, you know, there's no such thing as a side effect. Drugs have effects, some you want and some you don't.
Yeah.
And it's like, just understand that, and you will do so much better in writing about pharmaceuticals versus physical medicine. Because like I could see where like I was trying to go. I was trying to say, what if we could come up with a physical medicine solution? Something where we could make the human body do something, and we could create an environment where the bone density had to go up instead of down. So sedentary lifestyle, bone density is going down. How do we get enough force through the bone so that we trigger it to grow, and not just maintain, like grow, like go back to where it was when you were 30 years old, which is when peak bone mass is. So I built a series of devices that are now found in OsteoStrong locations, and they put compressive force on bone to emulate high impact forces. So not high impact, but the emulation of high impact to manifest those growth differences, you know, that we see in younger years of life. So I did that. And then just through some of my connections, the first real clinical trial was at the University of East London. And they were using a nearby hospital facility to do patient recruitment and do the therapy act. And so as they were doing this, some of the physicians at the hospital who had osteopenia, which is like pre-osteoporosis and osteoporosis, were like, well, we can't be test subjects because we're not blinded, but we just want to use the device. Like, is there any reason we shouldn't? No, go ahead. It's very safe. And so they used it, and they noticed, they took DEXA scans and they showed bone growth. And they were thrilled because this was a problem that was bothering them, and they didn't want to take the medications either. You know, I find it interesting when I talk to a lot of physicians about prescribing certain medications, and then I ask, well, would you take this? Different answer.
Yeah.
Like, they'll prescribe something frequently, and it's like, would you take this? Well, you know, I might look into nutritional solutions first. It's like, well, you don't say that to your patients. So, and I get the same argument every time. Yeah, compliance. I tell patients to work out. They don't. I tell them to stop eating Twinkies. They don't. I tell them to stop drinking 2 bottles of wine a day, and they don't. So it's tough. Okay. I'll give them that. You know, like a pill, like, unless the pill gives them like immediate acid reflux or something awful happens right away, yeah, they might stick with that. So why is it always a medication? Well, that's part of the reason. So they used this device, and they got results that they never expected to get, even from some stronger courses of drugs that they would never take. And so they were thrilled. And when that clinical trial was coming to conclusion, and I wasn't writing it up, I was just there to make sure they were using the device correctly. You know, because you want to make sure they don't use it wrong and then get a bad result, and then it's like the data is worthless. Yeah. So say it again.
No, I was agreeing with you. To make sure they're actually have the proper technique.
So some of the physicians were saying, I can't believe the forces that are going through my body. It's like 6, 7, 8, 9 times my body weight. And I remember the one who had the highest loading compared to her body weight. She was a 90-pound woman, and she was putting 9 times her body weight through her hip joint. And she's like, that's like, I looked up, like, strongest people in the world can't lift that. And I'm like, well, okay, you're not lifting it. You're compressing your bone mass, specifically in the hip joint, to get that loading. But it's a very interesting point, because in weightlifting, like, if like really once you look at that research and then compare it to regular weightlifting, and I did that, I did a comparison of the NANES database and what people on average lift. And for those that don't know what the NANES database is, it's the largest health database In the world, they add about 2,000 people per year and have been doing so for maybe 12 years now. And it's a whole battery of tests. There's strength testing, there's body composition testing, there's blood work, like pretty much every conveniently gathered and some inconveniently gathered health metrics are all put together on different individuals. And with that much data, you can look at certain people and draw some conclusions. Maybe.
Is it,
or
and it's like a
random
random sample of people, a random sample of population. Yeah, wow.
Right, but then once you get the random sample, then you can parse it out to like marginally athletic people, highly athletic people, and then you start to understand maybe athletic populations. It turns out like some of the most athletic people that are in the NA's database work out 2 or 3 times a week.
Right, okay,
Now,
not every
I'm
day.
shocked. Like, really? Like I would expect people to be working out a little more than that. But we do live, well, I live in the United States, and 75% of men in the United States are overweight or obese. So you got to consider what the norm is. Like, what's the average? If the average is, overweight or obese, well, then the fit people in the NA's database may not be so fit. But for the purposes of what I was looking into, it was like, what sort of weights are people dealing with when exercising the lower extremities versus how we compress the hip joint in the OsteoStrong medical devices. So looking at the capacity, by the way, in OsteoStrong, all the force is self-created. So force doesn't come on you. You create the force, and you're looking at a computer readout of what your body's capable of. So think about it. This is for safety reasons. Like, can I break my own finger by squeezing a fist?
No.
Can't do it. No, you can't. Because of neural inhibition. It's sort of like it takes more force to bite through a carrot than it does through your own finger, but you can't bite through your finger. Because your own neural inhibitory process will stop you from doing that. Like, it just won't let your jaw muscle contract enough to actually, cause you to go right through a bone. So, looking at that whole solution, I realized people are 7 times stronger in a stronger range of motion, like right here, than they are in their weaker range of motion. So now knowing that, I thought, wow, like weightlifting is a terrible approach to stimulating muscular growth because we are so powerful, yet we don't know it. Because every time you go to lift weights, you pick the weight you can handle in the weakest range of motion. But you're actually 7 times more capable. See, what you need is a weight that's changing as you're moving it from strong to weaker range. And it's got to be relevant in every range. So then I thought, okay, I'll write a book about band training because that seems to have never taken off. And keep in mind, this was probably like 7 or 8 years ago, way before I launched X3. And so I bought a couple of the heavier bands I could find because most of the bands out there are like 5 pounds. It's not relevant for strength. Great for rehab, not relevant for strength. So I found some 50, 100-pound bands, and immediately it was like every joint in my body hurt because you can't, when you grab a hold of a band, it wants to be a circle. Well, the human body doesn't interface with circles so well. We interface with flat ground and straight bars real well. And that's been known, and that's what fitness is based on. But at the same time, you need those surfaces and those grips to be able to fully engage the body. So I thought, okay, I got to develop a product. Now it's not about writing a book, though I did write the book anyway. So it was like, we need something to keep the wrist neutral and the ankles neutral. And if we do that, we can load the body far beyond what weightlifting can ever do in the appropriate ranges of motion and trigger growth much faster. And that was the birth of X3. And I did write the book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time. It's a Wall Street Journal bestseller. People are very upset about the title. Most people who complain about the title never read the book. Shocking, I know. So, it's we don't really, like, the company doesn't target people in the fitness industry per se. We're much more interested in sort of the busy professional who can maybe read some science and understand it, but fitness people cannot understand science. It's not that they won't try, they're not capable. They're not supposed to. Like, just, I mean, look, the two biggest fitness information outlets on the internet are YouTube and Instagram. Videos and pictures.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like we're in preschool.
Right? You got to turn the whole book into a video of short Instagram reels.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and they can just flick past the parts they think they understand but don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the actual answer is. It's okay because I'm getting to the market that I'm looking for. But like, yeah, I'm just absolutely blown away. Like when I bump into these fitness people, like, you know, all kinds of swear words, which usually would hit a filter, but they misspell even the swear words.
So they get through.
Yeah, they can't even get their profanity right.
Yeah.
So, you know.
So John, who's it really working for? Is it like older people who have osteoporosis, or, you know, busy professionals?
Well, OsteoStrong, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
For X3, it's really just the busy professional. It's the guy who tried lifting weights, didn't get anything out of it, which, by the way, is like 99.9% of the population. Like, how many people do you two know? I already got this answer from Anthony, but, you know, could you create a list of 10 people that you know that have been working out for more than 2 years who look absolutely no different whatsoever from the day they started? Yeah, you could. Everybody.
Yeah,
could.
very common.
Because that's almost everyone who is involved in fitness. Nothing changes. If you're fat, you're still fat. If you're skinny, you're still skinny. Yeah. It's not working. And I got some explanations for that. The biggest genetic difference is tendon layout. So, like, if I look at my tendon, you know, like my pectoral, so the origin is here, and then it attaches right, you know, here, you know, that's where it's supposed to attach. Right here sort of comes underneath the bicep and attaches on the humerus. So its job is to draw the humerus in towards the midline of my body. But some people, maybe 1/10 of 1%, have it over here or anywhere else along that humerus bone. Well, the further away from the origin you have it, and there's maybe 6 or 7 different studies on this, further away you have it, the longer lever you have in your body. So if you have a lever in your body, you have a massive advantage. And this is why most people lift weights and get nothing out of it. And then all of a sudden there's one guy who seems to grow bigger every time the guy shows up at the gym. You know, I went to high school with a guy like that. His name was Mark. It was like, we started working out at the same time. We were about the same size. The guy put on like 40 pounds in a summer.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think I put on 1.
Yeah, I know people who've done that. I'm got a feeling
yeah,
might have done that
and
as
I'm
well.
just looking at him like, what are you doing? And he goes, I don't know. The only difference between what you're doing and what I'm doing is I smoke cigarettes. And I'm like, yeah, I don't.
It's got to be the cigarette.
Yeah. So, I mean, the guy he just couldn't stop growing incredible musculature. And he ended up being just an excellent athlete. But, you know, that's the genetic born NFL player kind of genetics. But when you train with variable resistance, you get that leverage. Like, you're actually nullifying the advantage that most people have and getting the advantage or getting the advantage yourself, depending on how you want to look at it. But the lever arm makes no difference. And like really tall people, like look at the NBA. A lot of those guys, like, they're in shape, they're lean, but they're pretty thin. Not a lot of guys can put on a lot of muscle. Now they can, because now it's still harder to see on an NBA player when you're 6'7".
Yeah, it's stretched out so much.
Yeah, exactly. Like a short guy puts on 20 pounds of muscle, and everybody's like, "Whoa!" Like,
it's a different ball of muscle.
Yeah, an NBA player puts on 40 pounds of muscle, and nobody notices.
Yeah.
So, but still, they can grow some musculature because now their disadvantages are gone, and they can grow muscle like the NFL player now.
Yeah.
Can you, John, can you dig into that a bit more? Because I'm taller and quite lean. So because is it that they can get into that kind of sweet spot of maximum tension and force faster with the X3 bar, or why is it that it's easier now for tall people to build muscle?
It's the middle part that you don't get stuck on. It's the getting stuck right here.
Right. Okay.
Which we talk about that as like sticking point, but really it's just kind of a lack of leverage. Lack of access to the muscle, because when somebody helps you past that point, you can do lockouts or something with a weight that's much higher than you would otherwise be able to handle in full range.
Yeah, because we've probably all seen the short muscular guy who can bench a heap. They put 150 kilos on the bar, and it's because they're only moving the bar about this far.
That's right. Right. And their elbow is still closer, inside. So they don't have the mechanical disadvantage that a taller guy would. But with X3, none of that makes a difference.
Yeah. And it also, you see even in weightlifting, trying to accommodate for that exact phenomenon. They have like, the heavy chains that put on the side of like a bench bar. So whereas like, as you're going up, it's pulling up more chains off the ground, which would just add weight to it. It's the exact same concept, except it's not adding nearly as much weight as like the X3 bar can. I mean, it's adding sort of like 5 pounds per link, but obviously there's a limit on how many of those links.
Right. On there. Yeah. If you're 11 feet tall, maybe you can get some good variance in there, but if you're not, then probably not.
Yeah.
That was sort of the other thing that when I looked at, this is the advantage that I had that no one else who designed a piece of equipment ever had the advantage of having, which was the bone density research. So nobody really knew what the maximum capability of people were in their most optimized range of motion. It was always seen as a place where you absorb force. So you can absorb, like gymnasts absorb 10 times their body weight upon landing. From the uneven bars. That's the biggest drop they have. So 10 times their body weight. You know anybody that squats 10 times their body weight?
Oh,
no, neither does anyone else. Yeah. So like way higher loading capability we have. So how do we access that from an exercise science standpoint? Like, how do we get the benefit of the landing that the gymnast has without having to actually become a gymnast? Because there's all sorts of reasons why we can't all go do that. So, I mean, if you're like over 5'8", you can't do that, right? Anthony would never. If we put him on the uneven bars, he would just like whack his feet the other bar. Like seriously, like you can't fit. Yeah. So how do we get that proper loading? And I realized that the ratio of force was really the critical issue, because there have been some studies that showed variable resistance was great, but they'd be holding X at the bottom and maybe 1.2X at the top, where you really want X at the bottom and maybe 4 or 5 or 6X here. So it's got to be in. Coincidentally, after I started, somebody came out with a study. Can't remember the author, but it's in the book. And they showed that the greater the ratio of variance, the more muscular growth there is in a shorter period of time. So, and X3 was like even a more aggressive ratio than they were using in that study. But I think that study might have been designed sort of around like, hey, this X3 idea, we're either going to prove it or disprove it, because that's how science works. You don't start out trying to prove something works. You want to find out, you want to create a test that'll show if it works or not, and potentially why. Yeah.
Or potentially trying to disprove it. That's like a properly designed study is like, okay, this is our assertion that this works. Okay, let's try and disprove it. Because you're at a much stronger position there. Because you're looking for ways to test it and look for chinks in the armor. And if you
what nuances of the study the previous studies would have made this work, even if it wasn't what it was. you know, so like let's eliminate even more variables that people didn't think of in the first trial. So yeah, and with variable resistance, there's 16 well-written studies, and 16 out of 16 show you grow muscle faster. And I would say, like, there was a study in the very beginning, one of the first ones I cited, that showed that people were getting stronger at the triple the rate, which is why I called the thing X3. It's funny, like, we tested that with a bunch of audiences and people just didn't believe it. And so I went to the strap line of the product is now greater force, greater gains, which is nobody argues with. And they grow muscle very fast still, but the idea that it was triple the speed, two things I didn't like about it. One is people found that so hard to believe, though it was true in the study. But also, I would say it's more than triple, because most people who lift weights, they get 0. You know, it's like, what's your progress after a year? 0. Or what's your progress after 2 years? 0. So, yeah, I mean, it's harsh to say. And I mean, I called the book Weightlifting is Waste of Time for a reason. And I call out all sorts of statistics about how unfit Americans are, even the ones that go to the gym all the time, because the people that you see at most gyms and the people that you see at the Pizza Hut, are they any different? No. I mean, maybe if you go to Gold's Gym in Venice, California.
That's different.
It's totally different, though. That's like, you know, like half the members there are professional athletes.
And also, like, the people going to Pizza Hut are often the same guys going to the gym, because they go to the gym and go, I earned this pizza, and they eat something wretched for their body. And and they're really, really fighting against themselves. So
I earned this pizza.
Even putting in
replace pizza with heroin and say that same sentence. Like, it's just, I mean, not that pizza is as damaging as heroin, but like, stop justifying things to yourself.
Yeah.
When you want something that you know is bad for you, like, just play different scenarios. Like, boy, I had a really hard day, so I should be allowed to cheat on my wife today.
Yeah.
Ask her. I don't think she will agree. So, like, it's like one of these.
I've earned this.
How bad.
I've earned these hookers.
I've been in the gym all day.
I played with the kids. I bought my wife flowers. I earned this hooker.
Yeah, right. Like, no one would say no. I mean, I'm sure there's some guy out there that probably has said that.
Probably does think that.
Yeah. But it's like, nobody would say that about anything other than food. And this is where we were talking earlier, and I was just about to say, like, for some reason, society, like, if I see somebody who smokes and I see them just lighting, their next cigarette with the burning butt of the last one, I can say to that guy, like, this is a bad path. Like, you like those too much. Like, get that out of your life. And if I say it and not be a smart ass about it, even a random person will be like, yeah, you're right. Maybe he'll listen. Maybe it won't be me. Maybe it'll be the next guy, or maybe it'll be his uncle who dies of lung cancer, and then he goes, oh fuck, I gotta quit doing this. But try walking up to somebody and telling them they eat too much.
Yeah.
Like, it's a random person.
It's not going to go down well.
Just think about the conversation. I couldn't help but notice you're overweight. You should probably, like, make some better nutrition choices. Can I help you? They will, like,
lose their mind. Yeah.
They'll lose their mind. And that's just the situation that we're in. Telling them you shouldn't be eating that. Like, I went to a Super Bowl party this year, and the food was all just junk food. And so I went and I had a couple pounds of ground beef, and then I went to the party, and they noticed I wasn't eating anything, and I'm like, well, you're not serving anything that's food. This stuff is edible.
Straight faced.
I actually, in my own way, I thought that was, like, the nicest thing to say. It wasn't. They were like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I would never put any of this in my body.
Yeah.
By the way, you shouldn't either. I like ruin this event. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm just gonna go, guys. I can just finish this game at home. Yeah, it's okay. Nobody wanted me there at that point anyway.
Yeah, like you talk about that as well. People.
Why is that such a problem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be.
No, but
You should be able to say, like, we should hold ourselves to a higher standard and not like. Now, I do, like, if I'm at a group dinner, especially if I'm paying the bill, the people are like, oh, let's get the cheese sticks, and let's get the Bavarian pretzel balls, and I'm like, yeah, let's just take the steak entree, and if you have the chef just cut it up and give us a bunch of toothpicks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I do that all the time, and any restaurant will be like, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And then the people are like, why did you do that? That's not even an appetizer on the menu.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm the customer. I get whatever I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, we're going to eat healthy. If you're going to be with me, that's the price you pay. Yeah.
Well, then, a lot of people do, use food in the same way that we use drugs, and people use, people who do use drugs, or they drink or smoke, whatever, maybe they'll do that on the weekend. Maybe they'll drink on the weekend, or do, a special event, they'll go to parties or whatever. And they, they know that it's bad for them, and they accept that it's bad for them, and say, well, I know this is bad for me. However, I want this effect. I want to party. I want to have fun, or whatever. And I'll take the hangover. I'll take the healthy. I mean, they don't realize just how much it's hurting their body, but they at least recognize that concept, and they're willing to make that trade-off. But with food, they can also do that as well, but they don't realize it's as bad as it is. And it's like, oh, I'll have some pizza. Oh, it's not really the best for me, but I like it. And so we have that same sort of relationship with food, and even think about it in the same way. And then you tell a junkie.
Keep talking. I'm not going away.
Yeah, you tell a junkie, it's just like, hey, you should probably cut down. A lot of them will get very offended as well. They get really pissed off because you're challenging their habit. And the thing is that they probably know already that
that's
this is bad for them, and now you're reminding them of this, and you're like, God damn it, I'm just trying to party. All right, I'm not trying to think about reality. And you do that with food as well, and people get really pissed off.
It's the socially acceptable addiction.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And like every every birthday that comes around, out comes the birthday cake. And every sort of social get together, out comes the cakes and coffees and sweets and all that sort of thing. It's very cultural, isn't it?
And in some cultures, it's better than others. My mother's from Belgium, and I don't like this about Belgium, but I also do. So, I mean, they're always talking about the chocolates that come at the end of the meal, and they're always talking about the little cute pastries. And I mean, like, this shit just pisses me off, because I have 36 first cousins in Belgium.
Oh, Jesus.
Can you imagine how many pastries I get handed and I have to say no?
Yeah.
It's just like, come on, guys, what I do. You all follow me. Stop it. But the good news is, it's usually one piece of chocolate and one little pastry.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about volume.
Yeah.
And that's not how Americans do it. Like, if you get a piece of cake, you get like a huge piece of cake, and you might have a second one. They don't do that. And then in a lot of Asian countries, being overweight is considered shameful to your family. Like, you're like gluttonous. So but they never talk about it. It's just like, when somebody gets fat, it's like,
Yeah.
it's just like the old guys are like, no.
Yeah. Like the Asian nail places where they have those like undercover cameras and things like that. If someone comes in, oh my God,
and you see the subtitles, and it's like, look at this fat lady, right? Yeah. They trash talk.
Well, yeah.
That, and I mean, I'm not saying bullying is positive, but I think it can be. Maybe a little bit of peer pressure could help us all.
Well, certainly bullying and really going after someone and being horrible is obviously,
well, that's negative. Yeah.
yeah, is very negative. But in psychology, we look at, keeping people in the range of norms. And, when someone's stepping outside of that, it actually is beneficial to the society for them to just go, hey, what the hell are you doing? That's not really what we do here. And, in social,
especially what we know about health, it's unhealthy. It's not, I mean, like what you see on the cover of Sports Illustrated now, they're like glorifying obesity. Like that's just the wrong move.
Yeah.
Like if you choose to, if I had to put, one over the other, like somebody likes smoking marijuana. Okay. So you're going to get dumber. There's quite a bit of research. Now, when you quit or when you take an extended break, a lot of brain activity comes back. But really the mechanism of THC is like limiting blood flow to the brain. That's why you uncontrollably laugh about stuff. It's like your brain isn't working.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't think of that name of that thing I need to eat. Oh yeah, fork. Give me a fork. I mean, that kind of thing. That's hilarious. But at the same time, it's because you limited the blood flow to your brain.
Yeah.
But if somebody has a habit of that, the long-term effects aren't as damaging as if somebody's habit is, I just like to eat a box of candy bars every day.
No.
And that's the kind of thing that we need to be able to tell people no.
Yeah. It'd be nice to, when this gets more, mainstream. I think it is, people, because obviously, everyone has a different opinion on what's healthy eating. And that's very hard for people. And they say it's just like, who am I supposed to listen to? Everyone's making great arguments. I don't know what the hell to believe. But, we obviously, the three of us are all making our arguments for a carnivore diet or a carnivore based diet. And, and it's starting to get some traction, and people are now, being mouthpieces themselves and start talking about this.
Yeah, they become healthier, and then they go tell everybody, right? Yeah,
that's it. And so, eventually we're going to be able to get them being, enough in the mainstream that they're able to sort of keep people into like that, in that social constriction, saying, hey, actually that's really not healthy. You should really put down that carrot. That's really going to screw you up. And actually have that make sense, because it sort of sounds insane. Like, put down a carrot, like, why would a carrot be bad for you?
A carrot was what I needed.
Yeah, exactly. And and
then we got to untrain a lot of people who think that, they eat carrots all day. That'd be the healthiest thing they could do. I'd love to eat carrots all day. No, you'd be like living on a toilet.
Yeah.
You'd probably give yourself diverticulitis.
Yeah.
The standard of care for diverticulitis still, there's been 10 years of research that shows the higher your fiber, the worse diverticulitis gets.
Yeah.
Yet the recommendation when you get diverticulitis is only fiber in your diet.
Yeah.
Like, don't eat meat, nothing, just fiber.
Yeah. Well, and
makes it worse.
And even more insane and counter to their own thinking is that, when you go to the hospital with this stuff and you have to have Tourette's test, you go on a low residue diet. So they even tell you, like the general surgeons will say, hey, no fiber, nothing like that. As soon as the infection is cleared, they say, now you better get on that high fiber diet. That's what's really going to protect you. It's like, are you insane? Like you literally had to stop them from eating fiber because that was making this thing worse. And now it's stopped, and you're telling them to do the exact thing that you told them was going to make it worse. Like that's just a level of insanity to me that just beggars imagination, because like you are countering yourself. You see the evidence in front of you. You're saying, yeah, don't do that. Oh, but now you really need to do that. Like, what in the hell are you talking about? But yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in the hospitals, unfortunately.
Every day in the hospital system. Also, what's in the cafeteria of? Actually, I'm kind of curious. What's in the cafeteria in Australian hospitals?
Awful. It's just carbs and sugar.
Yeah,
And
it's just sugar, right?
that's
Yeah,
it.
same thing with them. Yeah, it's like, yeah, they got a little slice of apple cake or apple pie, and they got a
Ice
a couple
cream.
of salad options and a couple pieces of sliced fruit, and you're like, where's the barbecue?
Yeah.
Like you
And like
walk in,
soda machines, you know?
oh yeah, they all have soda machines everywhere.
Yeah. You know, and and the patients are getting, just sugary carbs. Like that's it. You know, it's a lot of bread with jam, fruit cups, fruit juice. That is 95% of what these people get,
Mm.
you know? And
Also,
like,
fruit juice, like
mm,
that court case ended a long time ago. Fruit juice is like right up there with like Coca-Cola.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and
The hell drinks fruit juice?
yeah, and some of them even worse, I mean, there's certain fruit juices that have more grams of sugar per ounce than Coca-Cola. And it's just, oh, but it's good for you because it has vitamin C. I'm like, whoop-de-doo. You mix vitamin C in with your cocaine, you realize that this is good for you now. It's like, oh, I'm doing this for my health, It's just like, no, you're not. That's nonsense, and giving this to people in the hospital, that bothers me so much. And these people are sick, and like, and I mean, we've known since the 1930s that carbohydrates fuel cancer, and the cancer cells taking 400 times the amount of glucose as our other cells, from Otto Warburg, Nobel Prize winner in 1930, and yet we are feeding cancer patients the vast majority of their food.
Yeah, just sugar. Yeah.
What the hell are you doing?
I often I did not take a single oncology class. I've read a lot of cancer papers, so I would say I have a working knowledge. Somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, I've been diagnosed with it. I'm like, hey, not my field. However, I usually tell people when I hear somebody say cancer is always fueled by glucose. And so if you shut that down, like the cancer cells can't live. And so I hear that all the time from people who are just reading biohacking information or health books like yours or anybody's. And I say, you know what? It certainly depends on the type of cancer, and I've not read enough to say that unilaterally about all different types of cancer. It sure seems that that's the case, but I'd hate to be wrong on that subject. So I tell them, you're going to have to look elsewhere for a more definitive answer, because I just don't want to touch it. But it sounds like you've read a lot more about oncology than I have. Is that basically true? I mean, I also know that certain types of cancer are hormonal sensitive. Breast cancer, for example, it's estrogen sensitive. So the sugar is not the whole story, but could it be?
It's a major part. And even though if things
is it the biggest part?
I think so, yeah, absolutely, because it's you can have different sensitivity. Sure, you can have an estrogen sensitive tumor, and maybe estrogen will stimulate it to grow.
Right, but a hormone is not fuel.
Exactly.
A hormone causes a cell to divide.
It's just giving you a signal. But if you don't have the fuel to grow, you're not going to grow. And so you can have the estrogen, but if you're limiting the glucose and you're limiting the fuel supply, it's not going to be able to grow. And so that's a major bottleneck. And so and all the ones that I know of, I haven't heard of any that don't follow that glucose pattern.
I haven't found that either, and I have looked for some, maybe there's a type of cancer that just likes fats or just likes proteins or what. No, they're all glucose fueled.
Some like glutamine as well, but not all of them. From my understanding, all of them need this massive amounts of glucose, because they go into a fermentative state. They're not going through oxidative phosphorylation. So now they're having to ferment, and that requires massive amounts of glucose because it's not as efficient. You're not getting, the 36 ATP, you're getting like 2, and so you just need tons and tons and tons of this stuff. And so it's very, very glucose dependent.
Hey everyone, if you need a little extra help getting started on a carnivore diet and my online resources that I have for free aren't enough for you, you can go to www.howtocarnivore.com and sign up for a 30-day carnivore challenge where you'll have online resources, group support, weekly Zoom meetings, as well as the ability to chat live with myself, Simon Lewis, and the others in the challenge who can help you and support you and give you extra advice and help you along the way. So if that sounds like something that would be beneficial to you, then please go to howtocarnivore.com and sign up. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you there.
I started in life sciences because my mother was diagnosed with osteoporosis. I wanted to help her and developed a series of devices that would mimic like high impact forces. So high impact forces into the body, absorbed into the bone mass at very specific, actually impact ready positions. So for example, like this kind of position for those not watching, like back of the hand in line with the clavicle, 120-degree angle between upper and lower arm. That's how, if you trip and fall, that's how you're going to protect basically your face from hitting the ground. And the body's very efficient at reacting in that way. We are 7 times stronger in the impact ready range of motion than we are in the weaker ranges of motion. However, we keep doing something really stupid. We keep lifting weights. If you're 7 times stronger in one part of the movement than you are in the other part of the movement, why the hell would you lift a static weight? That's dumb. Like, that's clearly not how the body works. And so I went to develop something that matched our biomechanics, or at least came close, because now what we're doing, just regular resistance training, it's the same weight on the bottom where you have 1/7 the capacity of what you have at the top. So you basically pick a weight. When you go weightlifting, you pick a weight that you can handle in the weakest range of motion. And really you're stimulating very little musculature, but you are damaging the joints chronically. And Peter Attia, Dr. Peter Attia, he's said this a number of times. He says, my problem with weightlifting is we overload joints and underload muscle. Yeah. I love it. I mean, he was sort of thinking the same way I was. And he said this like during, like while I was developing this. So like, wow, he and I are thinking right along the same line. And he's a really fit guy, but he does kind of focuses on endurance exercise because he's like, weightlifting is just not it. Yeah. And I love that he made that comment, and made perfect sense to me because it was right in line with my research. So I compiled a bunch of research, pretty much everything on variable resistance, and determined not only the variable resistance wins against regular resistance training, hands down every single time. There was one fraudulent study, and I believe it was malice that drove this study, where the variable resistance group, well, the control group was allowed to lift however much weight they lift in the gym. Mm-hmm. So whatever the relevant weight is, but the variable resistance people were only allowed to train with TheraBand, and which goes up to 14 pounds. Yeah. So they're only allowed to lift 14 pounds. And then, the conclusion was that variable resistance wasn't good. Well, the whole test was rigged. Yeah. Like no one's going to get stronger from 15 pounds of force. You use more strength putting your shirt on in the morning. So, it was just like a stupid study. But other than that one, which is fraudulent, 19 out of 19 studies find that variable resistance puts on muscle much faster, gets you stronger much faster, faster recovery, zero muscle soreness. Like it turns out, like soreness is not lactic acid. You actually cannot feel lactic acid. Soreness is from micro tear damage, which is inversely related to growth. So the more damage you do to muscle, the less muscle you grow. So it's fatigue, not damage. So the whole idea that we need to get little tears in our muscle and then they grow back, better, false. That's not how it works at all. If you have damage, then you won't grow. If you don't have damage and you took the muscle to fatigue, then you do grow. And that's, another myth I wrestle with sometimes if I just decide to talk to confused people, which I spend some days doing. And usually it's just like, just ignore these people. They're unwilling to learn anything. But we do live in clown world today. So there's a lot of people who are unwilling to listen or learn. Coincidentally, I think the internet's really run by a certain group that's very easily identified in the Dunning-Kruger study in 1999. You familiar with that?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
Yeah, it's
myself.
my favorite study. You'll definitely bring it up at a cocktail party, I promise.
Yeah.
And what it really says is that the dumbest people think they're the most competent and smartest people.
Yeah.
I mean, that just explains the internet.
Yeah.
Like you see people making sweeping statements like this is the way things are, and they don't even know the definition of the words they're using, but they're not intelligent.
Yeah.
So what they don't know doesn't stop them because they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Whereas the smart, and here's the funny part, in the study, the smartest people thought they were a little above average.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think they aced it.
Right.
They were, they said, I did great, but I had, I was confused by a few different puzzles and questions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And because the smart person knows what they don't know, therefore they question a lot of things.
Yeah.
Is this all the information? Have I even been given all the information to answer the question? Whereas the dumbass doesn't think about that.
Yeah.
They just, I know the answer to everything.
Yeah. Well, there's that, Thomas Sowell, who I don't know if you're familiar with him. I love Thomas Sowell. He's my favorite.
I think I've read everything he's written.
Yeah. He's brilliant.
Like one of my favorite people.
Yeah, same. And one of the things that he said that has always stuck with me was that it takes a lot of knowledge to understand just how ignorant we are. And unfortunately, a lot of these people, will never get there. And so they think that I just know everything. I'm just, I can see everything, all the pieces of the puzzle. And they only see a small piece of it, and it's, the old saying, small bit of information is a dangerous thing, and that's exactly what I think is being described there, is these people just think that they can see the whole puzzle and extrapolate from that the entire picture. And of course, that's very difficult to do. Socrates as well, he said that he was said to be the most wise man in the world, but he's like, how can I be the wise man? I don't know anything. I don't, like, why me? And he went around talking to all the most learned people that, like the study showed, these people thought very highly of themselves. And, he just started talking to them and asking them questions and realized these guys didn't know jack, but they also didn't know that they didn't know jack. And he at least knew that he didn't know jack. And so he was like, well, all right, I guess, and there.
Yeah, it's this is kind of a sidebar, but I've always tried to like hang out with smart people because I can learn something from them, and not smart people that I might meet at some shitty dive bar or something like that. I'm just not really interested in talking to them. And so, yeah, I realize that, like, I pretty much, like, my social time is like spent at like private clubs. Like I joined like all kinds of private clubs because I just want the moron quotient to be lower. I don't want zero. I mean, that's impossible, but when maybe 50% of the people in the room are like actually have something interesting to say, like, that's going to be a great night.
Yeah, definitely. And that was I think it was, who was it? Comedian Carlin. He said that, if you think about it, the average IQ is 100. What does that mean? It's an average. So that means that definitionally, half the people that you meet in your life, day-to-day basis, are below average intelligence. It's like that. It's like, that's a pretty frightening thought. But I've certainly known people that aren't as intellectually gifted that still work hard and still recognize that they don't know certain things and don't try to act like it, and they actually become very, very successful and interesting people. They just they just work on it. And
somebody doesn't have to be a genius, but at least know that you don't know everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's very
I think, like like, no matter who I say this to, no matter where they are in politics, I just think of the dumbass posts you see in politics, and either direction, it's just like people are just saying outlandish, stupid shit. It's like, where the fuck did you get that?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, now chances are they probably got it from CNN, because CNN lies and nobody really checks. But yeah, that's like when somebody posts something like ludicrous, I'm like, did you get that from CNN?
Yeah. And yeah, well, and that there was a study out of Columbia, it was like 2015 or something like that, that came out, and they found that 52% of people who comment on some sort of internet post and talk knowledgeably, like saying this, like, well, no, this is wrong and this is why. 52% of them have never clicked the link. And so they're just going off the headline, and they're just
Man, you know the author of that study?
No.
Give me an app, it. Like, I'd love to reference that. Yeah, all
yeah.
the time.
I'll look it up for you. I don't have it off.
Yeah, put in the show notes. I think everybody wants to see that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was very
cool. Yes, somebody will, like, the headline might lead you to believe that the study is about like how carbohydrates are good, but really the study's about how you don't want carbohydrates in your diet, and they'll just jump to a conclusion based on the title.
Yeah, or you read these sorts of things. I first sort of looked at that. Well, actually just reading the WHO studies when I was 13. I'm probably one of the few people who was fact checking the WHO when they were 13. But they came out with this outrageous claim that Cuba had a better healthcare system than America. I'm like, there's not a.
Well, I've seen that. Yeah. Oh, and anyone who's in Cuba that has a problem, they're out of that country. They're Canada. They're somewhere else to try and get right. No,
if they can, if they're able to.
Yeah, or they just die.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I was looking at it, I'm like, there is not a chance in hell that that's the case. But there was a lot of stuff, getting pushed out that, Cuba was so great, communism so awesome. It's like, how is that possible? And this was 1993. And I was just like, the Berlin Wall just fell like 4 years ago. Like, and we're already saying communism is better. Like, what? And, so I ended up like finding the study from the WHO, and they ranked the Cuban healthcare system as one of the top 5 healthcare systems in the world, and they ranked the U.S. as like 76. It was way down the list.
Right, and it was some Marxist that wrote the article.
Well, the head of reportedly the head of the WHO, at least now, is an open Marxist. And so I don't know if it was then, but there's a political bent to these international institutions, and certainly with the WHO. And
and they're also getting paid off. Like, whoever wants Marxism.
Yeah.
And anyone with money wants Marxism, by the way, because it institutionalizes them as the bank.
Yeah.
Nobody realizes that. Like, why do all these rich people want Marxism? It must be good for everybody. No, they already made their money.
Yeah.
They want to be the lending institution. They know if they're the only ones with money and nobody else has money, somebody has to come to them when they want to start anything, start a business, build a house, whatever.
Yeah.
If you're a billionaire worth maybe 20 million minimum, like, you're gonna be one of the new banks.
Yeah. And so this article, it was saying that we were way down the list, like 76, which I was just like too far. If you said that we were like 10th and Cuba was like 5th, I'd be like, I don't know, but I wouldn't have looked into it. But it just really overshot.
It's just egregious.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I looked it up, and like the study, this is 30 years ago. I looked at this, but from memory, it was something like they basically ranked countries by the actual medical care that they received, and access to doctors and specialists and outcomes from all these different things, and things you actually consider worthwhile when considering a medical system. And then said, well, that's not fair though, because some countries are richer than other countries, and so you're working with what you have. So
they adjusted for wealth.
Yeah, by GDP. So so the U.S.
Talk about a worthless study.
Absolutely. So they
we're going to tell you exactly how it is, except we're going to adjust it based on some other metric that you didn't ask about.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't tell you about it either. You know, the WHO, this is the first of 3 that I've seen that are exactly like this. They put in these little qualifiers that just, you know, make it complete bullshit. And so they divided it by GDP. So US actually had the number 1 medical outcomes and access to doctors and you know, treatments for heart disease and cancer and diabetes and traumas and all these sorts of things. And but we also had the number 1 GDP. So our ratio was 1-to-1. And Cuba had a terrible healthcare system, terrible medical outcomes. But they also had
GDP is worse.
But yeah, they had a more worse GDP. And so they had a positive ratio. And so, I mean, that's knowingly trying to mislead people.
I mean, if you were raising money to like invest in Cuba and you use that data, you could be sued for investment fraud.
Good point. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm very familiar with I got tangled up with some dudes who got in trouble for that a long time ago, and like you know, kind of first business sort of thing. And these guys were just defrauding people based on whatever, you know, information that was dubious or completely falsified if you really looked into it.
The WHO does a lot as well. And I found that if you see something on the WHO website and it has a link to the article right there, and it just sort of shows its work, you know, it could be pretty much, you know, it's probably their conclusions are probably in line with it.
Right. But when you have trouble finding that study, there's a reason you have trouble finding it, because they don't want you to find it.
Exactly. And I've noticed that they did another one when I was in medical school where they ranked the US as 37th. And, you know, a lot of things came out, people saying, oh, well, you know, we spend the most per capita on healthcare in America, but we're only ranked 37th. We're not even getting like, our money's worth. And again, I was just like, I don't think so. I think that's bullshit. And so I looked at the study. Again, it had 5 criteria, one of which was anything actually worth knowing about, which was medical outcomes and access to doctors, access to MRIs and x-rays. And that was
the only variable that matters. Let's dilute that by 4 other variables.
Yeah. And one of the other ones. Yeah. And, you know, one of the others, all the others were sort of along these lines, but the one I remember in particular said, what percentage of the lower 20th percentile's medical bills do the upper 20th percentile pay for? And the answer to that, of course, is who gives a shit? Because what does that have to do with your mom dying of cancer or not? You know, and of course, you know, the only relevant criteria, which is actual medical outcomes and access to care, we were again number 1. But they diluted it down and they had these fudge factors to make it appear as if the US wasn't great. And then another one came out a few years later, ranked us 40th. And I just didn't even waste my time reading it because I knew it was garbage, you know. But you know, that's the thing, is that, you know, all these studies, I try to, you know, stress on people, have to read them yourself, have to read the studies yourself. Don't just read the conclusion. Certainly just don't read the headlines. You know, when you're going through reading news reports or whatever, there's always going to be a catchy headline, but does the article actually support that headline and that conclusion? Quite often it doesn't. And it's really important to actually read the article. Yeah.
I just started a TikTok account, and I think half of my posts have been just like dispelling myths. Yeah. And, you know, one of them was like somebody posted or somebody published in the New England Journal. It was a Chinese study that got published in the New England Journal. So already I'm like, yeah, because that never happened up until like Biden became president. Yeah. Like, because we know how their medical system works, and we know how their academic system works, and neither reconcile with how we do things. Yeah. So don't really know how they pulled that off. Anyway, so they published this article that determined that intermittent fasting didn't do anything, and calorie restriction was the way to go. Now, anyone who's really read into this and compared the two studies, like that's just not true. And there's a whole host of reasons, but when you know anything about intermittent fasting, like the real benefits start at 18 hours. Well, they cut the fasting group at 16 hours. And on top of that, they were allowed to eat whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead, eat just anything, 3 chocolate cakes, whatever. So they really weren't dieting, and they only, like, it's like they just had an early dinner, basically, is how they pull off this 16-hour fasted period, which is not real. It's like skipping breakfast. Like, you're not a hero for that. You're gonna do intermittent fasting. Let's try 72 hours. How about with no food or water?
Yeah.
Like, that will get you incredible results. Like with the metabolic water that's leached out of fat cells, unbelievable the results you'll get out of that. But let's do that study. And coincidentally, when that study is done, and there was just one done with 5 days, no food, no water, these people all lost 15 pounds of body fat. This is after rehydration.
Oh, wow. In
5 days. They're averaging 3 pounds fat loss per day.
Nice.
So, right. So, like, I just pointed out, this New England Journal study is not worth reading, because when the benefits start at 18 and they only did one for 16 hours, don't read it.
Yeah.
It's dumb. They didn't even need to do this study. We already knew that didn't work.
Yeah. Well, and also it's not really controlling for that either, because you're having these people eat different things. If you want to just control for the timing of it, and having that makes difference.
Right.
You have the same calories, same basic sort of input.
And that study's been done, and it came out much more positive for intermittent fasting. But as soon as you have like one group eating whatever they wanted, they didn't even control it. It's like, we don't know, they had 2,000 calories or 4,000.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It's not. Yeah, I agree. That's a bit of a ridiculous study. As far as fasting goes, I've certainly seen a lot of studies that show that fasting is very, very beneficial. And then there's also studies that look at like fasting mimicking diets, which is basically a ketogenic diet. You're just getting into that metabolic state, the so-called fasting metabolic state. And we spoke about this briefly off air. But I think we both sort of agree that the so-called fasting metabolic state, probably is our primary metabolic state, and we only call it and we only call it a fasting state because by the time we were able to look at our biochemistry at a molecular level, everyone was eating carbohydrates, and it's just said, oh, this is what it looks like when you eat.
Right, and you have to constantly eat carbohydrates.
Yeah, exactly, and so when you get out of that, things work much better, and then people get these large benefits from fasting. But I think a large part of that is going to be from just being in the correct metabolic state. Do you know of studies that because most of the studies that I've seen are really just comparing fasting or a fasting mimicking diet just to a standard American diet. Are there studies that actually look at the difference of like fasting as compared to like a keto or a carnivore diet, like who both will be in the same metabolic state?
Not yet. No, like carnivore, like we just had the first like that where they actually use the word carnivore.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, I'm probably preaching some of the same stuff you've been talking about, but like previous studies. And there's one, don't remember the author, usually I'm pretty good at that. I just don't remember the author of this one. It was an epidemiology study, and they found 1,000 people, like this is the one that said meat and colorectal cancer, like you increase your chances by 2%. When you read down the method section, you realize that these people ate nitrate meat. Not steak. They ate like a gas station hot dog. You can't even buy nitrate meat in the grocery store anymore. So I think it's only like prison food and maybe what a gas station can get, because it keeps. That's what nitrates are for. It's preservatives. So people that ate nitrate meat every single day, 7 days a week for 40 years had a 2% greater chance of colorectal cancer. Okay. Now, were these people who were eating a gas station hot dog every day, were they doing it for their health? Probably not. if you know anyone who eats a gas station hot dog every day, is there a higher chance that they may have some other unhealthy habits, smoking, drinking, cocaine, heroin, meth?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the only people that I've ever seen order a gas station hot dog were living behind the dumpster next to the gas station, and they really liked meth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they didn't control for any of that.
Yeah.
Nothing. So it was another one of these fraudulent studies. It was one of these studies that was created to mislead you.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
and I mean, like the bias is just like outrageous. Like, why on earth would you, like, you know exactly what kind of people you're dealing with. Like, this isn't a study. This is a hit piece on the meat industry.
Yeah.
And you know, I tell all my fans, like, why you'll notice like the funding from a lot of like pro carbohydrate studies comes from some, like, you know, nutrition institution, whatever, sounds really academic and governmental. Yeah, no, it's bullshit. These are all organizations that are owned by like Nabisco, General Mills. Like, they're just selling you the shit they make. They're telling you Doritos are good for you because they want you to buy more Doritos.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
yeah,
like,
it's just,
yeah.
But I mean, we've had that kind of shit forever. Like, let's see, General Motors cars. Not that I have a problem with a company, General Motors, but you know, like 300 awards from JD Power and Associates.
Yeah.
You've heard that, right? Yeah, from like a Chevy, whatever, Chevy Cruze, and they have awards for like best 30-day satisfaction. It's a brand new car. If you're not happy in the first 30 days, like,
yeah,
that's probably a pretty shitty car. It's, I mean, they have to have an award for that. It turns out JD Power is a company that you can just go and buy an award from.
Oh, really?
Like, you pay them a fee and they'll just award you for whatever.
Oh, I should get a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fill
Yeah. I mean, I want one that just says I'm fucking handsome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most handsome guy in 2022, Dr. J.
Yeah. Man in town. Yeah.
Right. It just like it's companies do this.
Yeah.
And the food industry is no different. The difference is it can hurt people.
Right.
You know, whereas General Motors comes up with some weird metric to say their cars are great. And you know, if you check one out and you like it, it's probably a great car. Yeah. But not because of the awards. So my point is, Nabisco and Kellogg's and General Mills and Dannon, all these companies that are buying research, they're doing it to sell their products. And they also know they want everybody to go vegan because they know vegans don't eat kale. Vegans eat cookies and cake that are just, you know, like Oreo cookies. You know, Oreo cookie sales are just through the roof. It's because of vegans.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's the thing, you know, people don't know that. Oreo cookies are vegan. It'll say on there, you know, like vegan friendly. And it's like, are we trying to say that Oreo cookies are good for you? You know, like just the, I'm sorry, there's some weird alarm going on here. Let me just sort of mute this nonsense. All right, I think that's over. I'll try to clip that out.
You know, you're in Australia. Maybe somebody wasn't wearing their mask.
That could be, yeah. And they just have to get the snipers out. Certainly,
yeah. Got to kill them.
Yeah, just got to go. You know, you're not going to conform. You know, you got to be. Oh my god, yeah, they fooled me on that one. Hold on. They keep doing this where it's like it'll just go for a little bit and then it'll stop, and then I'm just hopefully that's actually it. But sorry about that.
Happens.
But, yeah. So I guess what was it? Where was I going with that? I sort of forgot.
We were talking about research being funded by snack food companies and how it's just so fraudulent.
Oh yeah, the Oreos. Yeah. And then like those articles that will come out every now and then that says, oh, you know, drinking 3 glasses of wine a night is better for your heart than an hour of cardio. I'm like, get lost. Like that's just.
I remember that. I
Oh,
remember that study, right?
Yeah.
And from one tiny metric of metabolic health, I think it was just like how much alcohol raises your heart rate versus like a light jog. And by the way, like I don't jog like that.
No. Yeah.
Like my heart rate goes way up if I'm moving.
Yeah.
Like, so what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I remember that article. It was really popular in women's magazines. Like Elite Daily ran that shit like 10 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what people want to hear.
Yeah.
People want to hear that they can still have cookies and cake and have the body they want. And, you know, it's like, that's great until you ask anyone who's in shape and they're going to be like, no, that's super not the way it works.
Yeah.
Well, all that food, just
Yeah.
don't even view it as food. Like when somebody says like, you know, you want a pizza, I'm like, oh, it's not food.
Yeah.
Like I won't eat that. It's just not.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's, you know, people say it's like, you know, obviously I do, you know, carnivore sort of diet. People say, well, isn't that's so restrictive? Like I don't think so. You know, I'm eating food. I'm eating, you know, food that is designed for humans. I eat all the food that's designed for humans, and I don't eat poison. Like I don't think that's restrictive. You know, I was like, are you restricted by, you know, you don't shoot heroin or do crack? Well, that's pretty restrictive. You know,
here's how I answer that question. I say, like, once you realize what should be consumed by the human body, it's not restrictive at all.
Yeah.
In fact, you're eating the only thing that should be eaten by the human body.
Yeah.
Like everything else is just crap that you were marketed to.
Yeah.
Like it's just marketing. Like you don't want Doritos, you don't want, I don't know, wherever.
Oreo cookies. Yeah.
Oreo cookie. Yeah. You don't want, like, someone tried to hand me an Oreo, vegan. Like I was at like a party like a year ago. She hands me like a sleeve of Oreos and she's like, I know you want these. And she was kind of kidding, you know, like she's vegan. I'm like, seriously.
Yeah.
Like I would, if I found that in my car, I'd throw it away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's trash.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that you put that in your body, you're just going to fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was true. And, you know, people say that, well, you know, even people that want to, you know, do a vegan diet, you know, it's, you know, vegan means just without meat, you know, it's not even plant-based necessarily. That's vegetarian.
Right.
You know, vegan just means no animal products whatsoever, you know? So, you know, and, you know, Oreo cookies are vegan. They're also vegetarian, you know, crack cocaine. That's vegan. It's also vegetarian. It's plant-based, and so is heroin. So
heroin.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, are we really saying that you know that rocks and heroin are the way to go here? You know, just as long as it doesn't have animal products, you know, then it's okay, or plant-based, then it's okay. But of course, there's so many things that we recognize, you know, full well that are cause serious harm. And
so I mean, neither of us really give vegans a hard time. We just promote meat as healthy food. But when you plant a field, what do you need to make the vegetables grow? You need manure from animals. You need bone meal, just ground up, you know, bones from slaughtered cows. Yeah. Like those are the two things that they put in the soil before planting a field. Never mind the fact that they might have killed thousands or even hundreds of thousands of animals to build that field. And they have to continue to kill and poison animals that are coming into that field because the animals, it's still their habitat. Yeah. It's not like they got a map and they're like, you're not allowed here anymore. Yeah. Like they just go there. Birds go and try and eat corn and they get poisoned by the millions. Yeah. 7 billion animals in the United States are destroyed every year for the sake of vegetable farming.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Yeah.
If you took poultry, so if you combine pork, poultry, and beef, if you combine those three things, it's about equal. It's an equal amount of death. But 70% of the standard American diet is plant-based. Yeah. So even though it's 50-50 when it comes to killing animals, more of the calories are coming from plant-based. So they kind of like ignore that, like, oh, but if you take chicken out of the equation and you just look at beef and pork, like the amount of death that plants create is insane. Yeah. And like, I think it was something like maybe like 5 million cattle per year
Mhm.
would feed everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
wouldn't be
500
surprised.
pounds of muscle meat in each one of them.
Yeah. I mean,
Like that's a lot of food.
yeah, that's a lot. Big cow,
Yeah,
cow lots of
if
things.
I had my own, space, land, and I had bison running around on it,
Mhm.
I mean, I'd eat like 1.5 animals per year.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, depending on the size. I mean, those things are massive bastards. And yeah, of course, chickens obviously are smaller, so you need more of them to
You
go.
kill more of them, yeah.
Yeah, and the very glaring difference between these two statistics is that the animals that we're killing to eat, we are actually eating them, whereas the ones that we're just killing to get off our crops, they go to
Yeah.
waste. And so
Nobody seasons them.
yeah. It's
That's why, like, a vegan doesn't know that, and if they're told it, they put it out of their mind. Like it's an achieved ignorance. Like I'm going to ignore all of these facts. What did Joe Biden say? Like we follow truth, not facts.
oh
I
yeah
know.
yeah
That's the president of the United States that said that.
oh well yeah
Yeah.
truth's not facts.
Awesome. We believe
Doesn't
in
truth
truth,
come from
not
facts? Pretty sure
I would have said so, but he got elected.
yeah
Or so we're told.
yeah
81 million people voted for him.
that's quite a lot. Yeah, most ever.
Yeah, more than ever.
Yeah. And so you were talking earlier about you mentioned that people want to sort of do the same thing and then get different results. And we sort of touched on this before coming on air. But that's one of the things is that we have people that you've said that you've received very, very threatening messages when you just say, hey, like if you want to lose weight and you want to get in better shape, just cut down on the carbs or maybe just eliminate the carbs. And people get very, very upset by that. And the people that are
I get death threats because of the carbs,
which is crazy. I mean, this is you're just a doctor and a scientist trying to put forward evidence to help people, and this somehow infuriates people when you're like.
By the way, by telling people to eat less carbohydrates and more protein, I make no money.
Yeah.
Not my business model at all. I'm just trying to help people out.
Yeah.
Like this is just like I make nothing.
Yeah.
Like people could just go and eat a Pizza Hut every day and use X3 and they get a protein minimum and there'd be a bunch of muscular fat people. But instead, I try and tell them like, well, if you want to be leaner. Now, there are some people who are like, I've been lean my whole life. I have a different kind of metabolism. I eat all kinds of shit and it doesn't seem to have much of an effect on me. I also notice those are the same people who claim to have no appetite. Yeah. So it's like, they go and eat pizza, but they're also never hungry. So do they eat a lot of pizza? Obviously not. Yeah. But if somebody tells me that, it's like, it's not my problem. I'm like, if you get your protein minimum 1 gram per pound of body weight, I guess if you don't tend to be addicted to these things, or if you take them out of your system and then put them back in, do you feel any inflammation? Some people say yes, some people say no. Hey, limiting carbohydrates doesn't necessarily mean eliminating them. And I even do have a protocol in the book that calls for some carbohydrates to stimulate hyperplasia. Okay. So you get, a surge of muscle glycogen going into musculature after the workout. But even replacing by the way, replacing glycogen estimates up until recently were ridiculous. Like maybe for a large muscular person, maybe 20 grams of glucose is required.
Right.
Not, that's not even a Snickers bar, guys.
Yeah.
That's nothing. That's how much muscle glycogen there is. Yeah. And so people say like, oh, I'm flat. I don't feel full muscles. It's like, but you're obese. So how about you let the muscles take the back seat for now, or your perception of what your muscles are. And we were talking about this last night. A lot of guys, like they feel like they're losing muscular size. Like, oh, it's because I'm losing all the glycogen out of my muscles. No, it's because you had intramuscular fat. Yeah. Which you're losing.
Yeah. Which is good. you know?
Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want to be well marbled.
No.
When something eats you, you want to be the toughest piece of meat they've ever come across.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, don't get eaten.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's not really a thing today.
Yeah. Well, if you get, you know, in the wild, also, like if you're just, you know, a bunch of lean muscle mass, you know, you're going to be harder to kill, you know, and you're going to be the one doing the killing more often. If you're, you know, overweight, have a lot of intramuscular fat, you're not going to be as dynamic and dangerous, you know, out in the wild. It's just, you know, that's sort of a survival thing as well. And, you know, people forget that we feed carbohydrates and grains to cattle in order to fatten them up and put in intramuscular fat to get that marbling that we like as predators for taste. But, you know, that is also in turn happening to us when we eat carbohydrates and grains. And that's what people don't understand. And that's, you know, something that, you know, we spoke about last night, where I think that, you know, as you know, for me, from my athletic background and career, I always felt far better. No, I played, you know, high level rugby, both on Carnivore and also not on Carnivore, just because I didn't know as much as I do now. So I didn't really notice when things sort of shifted off. So, you know, I know that you can get in remarkable shape by eating carbs and eating normal things. I never really ate all the processed crap and sugar, but I was almost entirely eating meat, but I would have a salad or some bread or whatever every now and then as well. But still, you know, mostly meat based. And you know, I was in very good shape and was very muscular and defined, and was able to perform very well. But I always performed far better. I was just like just a different human being when I was on Carnivore. And you know, when I talk to people about that, you know, like with the bodybuilding community, they really go into, they just slamming in as many calories as they can, on as many carbohydrates.
They keep talking about calories. Like,
yeah,
and carbohydrates are not even a macronutrient. Like nothing in your body needs carbohydrates. I mean, other than muscle glycogen, which, like I said, that's like a drop in the bucket. That's like nothing for carbohydrates. Other than that, which, by the way, your body will make if you don't have it. Probably not for hyperplasia purposes, because you need a rush of that. You need it like into the muscle so it stretches. It's like an actual mechanical stretching process to stimulate hyperplasia. But still, like, carbohydrates exist in nature to get mammals fat. Yeah. That's it. And for certain animal species, putting on body fat very quickly is advantageous. I mentioned this last night too. Bears give themselves type 2 diabetes every year. Now, type 2 diabetes is not a pathogen. It's a system of the body. I would say it's not a dysfunction. It's a function that we make a dysfunction by our behavior. Because what the bear does every year is they give themselves type 2 diabetes, and then they put on fat very quickly, which helps them survive the winter, because they just dig a hole and lay there for 3 or 4 months. You can't do that if you're lean, but if you're real fat, you can do that. Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, you know, with bodybuilding, they want to just pack in all these calories, and they think that equates to muscle growth. I don't think that there's any
they just keep getting fat, and then they have to diet, and they're torturing themselves doing that, screwing up their metabolism, because they're also still doing caloric restriction. Which my biggest gripe against caloric restriction, it's like, it doesn't work for a period of time. And then you have a metabolic adaptation so that you can be at a deficit, and then you start putting on body fat again, because your body is just deprioritized a couple of things, like regenerating skin, regenerating digestive cells. So you go through less autophagy and use older dysfunctional cells. There's a question about cancer there too. You know, like people that never get into autophagy tend to be, I mean, this is a theory, but it's a theory that makes an awful lot of sense. So you're never renewing your cells when you're in this calorie negative, but also not losing body fat metabolic adaptation. And some people screw up their metabolisms for a long time. Like, there was a study not that long ago on the people who had been on the show The Biggest Loser 6 years ago. Their metabolism still doesn't work.
Oh, great.
6 years. They've had a metabolic rate so that even when they eat at a deficit, they're gaining body fat.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, I mean, like that's all you really need to know, like calorie deficit. And also the bodybuilding community loves to simplify things into like memes. Like all of their advice is going to come from a meme, like a sentence fragment, like 5 words.
Yeah.
And so they love calorie restriction, calories in, calories out. That's all that matters. Jesus, that is like so oversimplified. It's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
that was one thing I was talking to Professor Ben Bickman from BYU about, was that, and he's been studying insulin and its effects on humans for 15 plus years. And he was saying that, when your insulin's up, your metabolism just goes down. And so when you're not eating carbohydrates, your actual basal metabolic rate, you actually use like 300 to 400 more calories just running your system than you would otherwise. And so you
have to.
Yeah, even if you wanted to argue the calories in, calories out thing, when you change your metabolic function, you're going to be using different amounts of calories just for your basic function. And like you say, you're not going to start recycling these cells. That takes energy, and you don't have the excess energy at the moment, and that can certainly keep these different genetic changes that could precipitate into cancer as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So when you have low energy, your body doesn't recycle cells, or it recycles less.
Yeah.
Because there's always some, metabolism of cells going on. Far less. But if you eat 0 calories, can your body adjust to 0? No, it cannot. This is why I promote intermittent fasting. Like, your body won't adjust to 0. So you can fast hard, dry fast, like no water, no food, 72 hours, like 3 days, you'll lose 3 pounds of body fat a day for most people. I'm a little bit less because I'm already pretty lean, but I'm actually, tomorrow I'm coming off right now, it has been 48 hours since I've had any food or water. Okay. Do I seem foggy? Do I seem confused? No, I feel fucking great. Yeah. Yeah, but here's the thing, the body cannot adjust to 0. Okay. So when you're fasted, it has no choice. It's going after body. Right.
And then, so obviously this is something that you do. How often do you fast? How do you sort of work that into your schedule? What do you like?
Well, just to sort of, I wanted to come up with a protocol that people would follow, because, hey, the best diet in the world doesn't mean shit if nobody follows it. Yeah. So like, it's got to be like followable. So I've been running some experiments with myself based on some of the things I've read. I was trying to do like 1 meal a day at a deficit. So not a huge meal, reasonable meal, and then be fasted the rest of the time. I think my body perceived that as just calorie restriction, and I didn't really get as much benefit from the fasting because it was still on a 24-hour cycle. So I hit a metabolic wall. I had an adjustment. So I was eating very little and seeing almost no fat loss progress. And I even gained some body fat. And I kind of did that to see what that protocol would be like. That protocol worked for about 6 months. And then for another 3 months, I just got nothing. And so I was in the middle of a lot of traveling, and I didn't really have time to examine it. And then when I went back to re-examine what went wrong, should I just, quote, refeed and just go back to normal carnivore and then try and do this? Because I got to help people lose a lot of body fat. Like, that's just part of the customer base. Like, there's going to be overweight people, and got to help them. They may need the most help. These are the people that walk into the gym and trainers don't want to talk to them, don't even want them as clients, because it's embarrassing standing next to an obese person. I'm not saying that that's my attitude. My attitude is the opposite of that. Yeah. But that's how they're treated in gyms. Yeah. Overweight people are not welcome in gyms. In fact, CEO of one of the largest gym chains in the world told me, we have a policy to tell overweight people to go somewhere else, because we want our place to be cool. We want a nightclub with treadmills, just good looking people.
That's absurd.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but that's the business. And I mean, this guy is not a bad guy. The guy told me this. Yeah. He's like, we're there to make money. Heavy people are bad for business. And I was just like, what? Those are the people that need the help.
Yeah.
The people who show up and they're already in great shape, like they're probably doing 10 other things. They don't need the gym.
No.
But that's just the way the world is. Like, you know, everybody with a business is trying to grow it. Now, I'm fortunate. You're fortunate because we got a business that the better we do, the healthier people get.
Yeah.
Which I think is that's like, I wouldn't live a life with any other formula.
Yeah.
Right. Like when I come, and I don't have a great like bedside manner. I tell people like to shut the fuck up and do what they're told, because like there's a lot of research in this. A lot of people pined over it, and it's really important, and it's going to fix you. But I don't want your editorial. I don't want you to be like, well, yeah, but I need to have a pizza while I watch a football game.
Right. Yeah, you don't actually. Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to eat at all. You're watching. Maybe you should pay more attention to the game.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. Like, I don't care what your excuse is. It's an excuse.
Yeah.
And I'm not accepting.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you have to be like that.
Yeah.
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys.
You know, Steve Jobs had pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
And you know how he treated it? He self-treated it.
Fruit, right?
He became a fruitarian.
Oh my God.
All he ate was fruit.
Poor
And I don't know
bastard.
who gave him that advice, but like as soon as I heard that, it was like, that seems like the worst thing you could do.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't know.
Well, it's not giving his body the nutrition that it needs to function and fight this thing off properly. And you're giving the cancer jet fuel. You know, I definitely would not recommend that to people. But you know, unfortunately, he as an intelligent and accomplished man as Steve Jobs was, he's still caught into this, like people are like, what the hell do I eat? And he looked at this
overwhelmed
and
with bad
things.
information. He had no idea how to
That's
make
it.
an informed decision because he had bad information. You can't make a good decision with bad information.
Yeah. And, that's part of it. That's some of the things that, like Thomas Sowell talks about when we're writing about intellectuals and things like that. They can be brilliant in their field and one of the most highly regarded experts in their field, but then they go outside of their field and they still have that mentality of I know everything and I'm so great at everything. And then they look at a little bit of information and they go, completely down the wrong path. But they have that confidence because they're normally right and they're normally the authority, forgetting that how many decades it took them to become an authority in their field. And if anyone else stepped into their field, just, shooting off at the hip, they would shut them down and be like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then they go into other fields and do the same thing. And unfortunately, they can get burned by that. I'm not saying that, Steve Jobs is going around, saying that he's an expert or anything like that, but you can end up looking at something and hearing something that sounds
about a month before he died, he said, I don't know how to treat pancreatic cancer, but I know what I did was the wrong thing.
Okay, right.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because they just kept, every time he went to the hospital, like, oh, it's getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. Well, at least he had, had some insight into that, and at least hopefully, other people hear that and take that to heart. Yeah, it's really sad. I don't know who convinced him that was the right thing to do.
I believe he was into it earlier in his life. So when he got sick, he might have gone back to it because he was sort of a kind of like in the sort of rebellious hippie movement in his early 20s, and then also very interested in technology and working in Silicon Valley. So that was kind of his setup. So yeah, when he got sick, perhaps he fell back on that way of eating, which is obviously disastrous for someone with cancer.
Mhm.
Poor guy. Hopefully that's not something that you know, gets any more people. But you know, you do see, you know, in sort of the vegan influencers and the fruitarians and things like that. Oh, this is so good for cancer. It's so good for this or whatever. And people making these really outrageous claims. And you have to imagine, you know, that people are taking this up and really hurting themselves. And that's a big concern of mine. And one of the reasons I sort of got into this was because, you know, people are really hurting themselves, you know, by eating the wrong thing. It's not a little thing, you know. It's not just like, oh, they're a bit overweight. You know, they're very sick, you know, and they're getting illnesses that they shouldn't have to have.
So, like, how about the people that eat a primary carbohydrate diet and just white knuckle every day with their hunger, and they don't get fat? So they think they're healthy just because they're not obese.
Yeah.
But you're still a metabolic disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And like I tell people, I had a fraternity brother say to me the other day, geez, I'm diabetic. And he's a slim guy. He says, I don't get it. And I said, well, you eat sugar. Well, no, I don't. I mean, like at night I have like corn chips or, you know, yeah, that's sugar.
Yeah.
Like, just because it's not sweet doesn't mean it's the right thing to eat. Like, and I have been arguing for a while that carbohydrates don't fit the definition of a macronutrient. You don't need them.
You don't. Yeah, you don't.
Well, then they're not a macronutrient.
Yeah.
Because a macronutrient is something you need to survive.
Yeah.
You don't need it, then it's not a macronutrient.
Yeah.
And hey, did you guys see my interview with Menno Henselmans?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I watched that just recently. That was the bodybuilder talking about you don't need carbs to build muscle. Is that right?
Right. Well, he's a scientist. He's been published all kinds of stuff. He has a great book called I think it's called The Mindset of Self-Control. So he did a systematic analysis of, I think it was 30 different studies on carbohydrates and performance. And there's a couple of like sentences in there, and he repeated them on the I don't really have a podcast. I have a show, which I do, like, I don't know, I say whenever I can, which I tell people is once a week, which is really more like once a month or never. You know, I don't have unlimited time. So, but when something important comes up, it's like, I got to interview this guy and I got to get the video up. So I did a Falsehoods of Fitness. That's what the show is called, Falsehoods of Fitness, on carbohydrate recommendations. And like Menno said, if you're athletic, you can absorb maybe 15 to 20 grams. That's it. And anything else is unnecessary and will probably be stored as body fat. And like, that makes sense to me as a guy who has a tendency of being hypoglycemic. So I've never liked sugary stuff anyway. Because of that, like, I know when I started doing the Hyperplasia protocol with the X3. So what that is you want to precondition the muscles before the workout and during the workout so that the cells are more encouraged to split and become two cells. So this is the closest thing we get to permanent muscle growth. But you got to do a couple things. You got to volumize the muscle. You have to exhaust the muscle, and then you have to stretch the muscle to the point where you're in a significant amount of discomfort, not pain, right before pain, like as much discomfort as you could do before you're like, okay, this shit really hurts. So I didn't write it that way. Yeah, yeah, but I mean, it should be uncomfortable, is what I said when you're stretching. And so what you do is you exercise and you take some glucose before the workout and drink a lot of water during the workout. So you're volumizing all the tissue. So you want the tissue to be taking in the glucose and letting all the water in as well, because you're better hydrated. And then so this is, if you ever remember maybe in the 90s, people talking about bag theory, like the casing around the muscle, the fascia around the muscle is one of the limiters of growth.
Mhm.
If you can stretch that muscle fascia out, you'll allow for cell division.
I've heard
And
some
so
stuff about this.
when I started doing that, I was having like 140 grams of carbohydrates, because there was a few papers that just said, you know, you want to do, you know, like your half your body weight plus 50 or some shit like that. I don't know. And I don't remember it because it was stupid research and it was very irresponsible. And like every day I felt horrible. Like, you know, my hands were like this, like this is way too much. And so I just started cutting it down. I'm like, okay, this recommendation is just wrong. And so when I revise the book, I'll be using Menno's systematic analysis, because it's really showing a very low level of carbohydrates to trigger that effect. But here's the craziest thing: of all the things that were in there, and a lot of it was not a surprise to me, because I find no performance benefit at all from higher carbohydrate day. I mean, I've run some experiments. I think people think they have like 3 Snickers bars and they go to the gym and they think, oh yeah, I'm going to just break all my records. No, you're going to do awful.
Mhm.
You're going to feel awful. It's not performance fuel at all. So here's the crazy thing he said: there is no dose response for carbohydrates and any performance increase with statistical significance.
Nice.
None. Zero. So you can have 5 grams, you can have 25 grams, you can have 50 grams. All of them do exactly the same thing. Jack shit for your performance. Now, when it comes to growth and hyperplasia, that's a different story. But at the same time, why are we so interested in something that's formerly a macronutrient that we're wondering, what is it really there for? What's it really in nature for? And not performance.
Yeah.
Zero performance benefits. I know you guys are not shocked by this at all, but generally the fitness community, and even a lot of like athletes, like I've talked to head coaches of football teams, they always tell their like former coach of the Chicago Bears would always yell at his players, eat as much carbs as you can. Like, that's your energy. Don't show up weak.
To show up weak, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a while ago. I mean, I talked to this guy maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago. And like, I had a lot of research that I had read and on my hard drive. And I'm like, God, I really want to correct this guy, but he's a head coach. I can't say shit. So, you know, just like,
I mean, carbo loading is a massive thing. Like, you know, I remember growing up playing sport, you know, be past a night before you play.
But you never do better.
No, I mean, I totally agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a nothing thing. It's just,
I think also there's a tendency or a desire in the fitness community to overcomplicate things, and for there to be some sort of hidden magic recipe, like you were talking about with the, I don't know, glucose before you work out and go train, and half your body weight plus 50, whatever. Like, people love that kind of like counting and intricacy, and there must be some secret or something magic that we can do that's going to accelerate things. And that's why I'm not getting great results. It's like, get healthy and train hard and train smart and do it every day, and it'll work, right?
Well, but also, I mean, they're getting told that, you know, training hard, you know, the smart way to train and the right way to eat is, you know, the wrong thing. You're eating carb, and that is the traditional sort of taught knowledge that, you know, you need to carbo load, you need to build up your glycogen base in your muscles in your liver. But, you know, as an athlete, I always felt better when I skipped that nonsense, but B, just didn't even eat anything the night before or the day of a game. Always
show up fasted. That's when you'll do better.
Always felt better. You know, I always thought of it as like playing hungry. You know, it's just like, well, you know, I'm you know, I want to be hungry. You know, if like I instinctually, like, I need to go hunt, I need to go kill, I need to go back to primal roots. You know, if I'm hungry,
you don't want blood flow going to your intestines when you're in the middle of a game.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to go into your quads, to your traps, to, you know, like, you got to perform.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what is the first thing a race car driver does when he takes his road car and puts it on the track? He shuts the AC off.
Oh yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
He doesn't want energy going into that. He doesn't want that extra belt turning, wasting power going into his AC.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Same thing.
Yeah. So let me just backtrack. How did you get into a carnivore diet yourself? Like how long have you been doing this, and what sort of brought you over to that? Because obviously
Actually, I'm glad you asked that question. I think I have the coolest story for this. Because I mean, hey, everyone came to it from somewhere, but so I developed X3, and I had always had, I mean, ketogenic nutrition. Like I read Dan Duchaine's book, and I forgot what that was called, but Dan Duchaine's, he only wrote one book, and I'll think of the name probably in the middle of the night. But I do that. But he wrote this book that was like the most impractical information for fitness you could ever imagine. A lot of it had to do with illegal drugs, or like, you know, like he was really big fan of the caffeine, ephedrine, and aspirin combination, which, you know, causes cardiac arrest in some. So, you know, I mean, like you read, and he would say that in the book. It's like, oh, it does have a chance to increase chance of cardiac arrest. And I'm just like, damn.
That's like a great idea.
So I read this book right after high school, and Simon, you said it, I was probably at the age where I thought, maybe this guy's got like the secret information.
Yeah.
Because I think people do fall victim to that. And so I read this guy's book, and it was like one terrible idea after another. Like the last, like it was all like hyper dosages of like crazy shit. And like he says, my philosophy is use any drug you can get your hands on that'll increase performance. Like that's like the thesis of this guy's book. They're making a documentary about this guy right now. Actually, Chris Bell's making it.
That's
right. Yeah, he's great.
He's a friend of mine. Great guy. Like it'll be hilarious. Everything that guy does is really funny. Bigger, Stronger, Faster was so funny. So like the last chapter of the book was ketogenic nutrition. And so I read that, and I'm like, well, that's not crazy at all. Like, I don't even have to break a law to do that. I can just eat meat. And so I had actually been on a ketogenic diet for a long time.
Okay.
And, but you know, it was like, I tested for ketones. Like you could get those strips you could pee on like 20 years ago. And so, you know, I looked at the pH in my urine and kept it pretty ketogenic. But I really, other than that one chapter in that one book, and I didn't have the scientific answers already. So I really came at it through like a very open-minded manner. Like I'm going to recommend whatever nutrition, because I didn't have a nutrition program. I launched the X3, and people were like, what should we eat for the best results? This is like week number 1. Like I launched the product on the Dave Asprey podcast. And then the next week, a whole bunch of people went out and bought it. And they're asking me, what's the best nutrition program? And I'm like, well, shit, I better film something. But before I film something, I better think about what I should say, because I really don't know. So here's where I went. Like, if you look at nutrition research, you know, or talk to nutritionists, if you talk to 10 nutritionists, you'll get 12 different answers as to what you should be doing. You know, because a lot of the same guys will tell you contradictory stuff. And it's like, but wait, that doesn't make sense. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either. But, you know, I say both of these things. So, yeah, amazing confidence I have in you guys. So I decided to just backstep and say, like, what are the greatest drivers of long life? Like in all cause mortality studies, is there anything that has been noticed of the people who live the longest? Now, the blue zone thing is bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know what all blue zones have in common?
Yeah.
You got no birth certificates.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, seriously. There's a study that says like all these blue zones, like the only thing they have in common, it's like there's no, nutritional anything. There's no secret route.
Wait, I'm not familiar. What's the blue zone?
Blue zone is where people live to be like well over 100 years old, like 110,
right.
20. Yeah, they're all lying. because the study says like the only thing that connects all these areas is they didn't have birth certificates 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So nobody knows when anybody was born.
Yeah.
So they're just lying about it.
Well, and there's other problems with the blue zone studies as well. That's something that people ask me as well. But like the blue zone study was like it's 5 zones, and they said, oh, these people on average live longer than other areas and have more centenarians than other areas. And the conclusion was that this is because they have a very plant-based diet. So eating plants.
Oh yeah. So what happened was somebody would say, I turned 120 today.
I see the agenda.
Private aircraft from Kraft Foods would land, and they'd have a dude with a briefcase of money. I mean, I know, I don't know this the exact scenario.
And a video camera.
It's been pretty well shown that these guys ended up taking money from big food lobbies or companies, and they would say like, oh yeah, I eat Triscuits every day, and I'm 120.
Yeah.
And like none of that's true. They never seen a Triscuit before, but they got a big check.
Yeah.
So that's really it's been a major point of vegan fraud.
Okay.
Yeah. But
well, it's more fraudulent than that too, because if you look at like Okinawa was one area, like most of these areas except for like Loma Linda, which is a Seventh-day Adventist group, and they religiously don't eat meat. And I think we've all sort of spoken about the history of that and why that was. It was more to suppress people's lustful feelings. That was a sin, and so they wanted to they wanted people that ate meat actually were more virile, and they were more wanted to procreate more. So like, oh, that's bad, we have to tamp that down somehow. That's healthy? No, that's not healthy. That's the opposite of that. And but the other ones, they actually, like in Okinawa, they said, oh, they eat these yams. They're really mostly plant-based. But if you actually look, they actually eat a lot of pork, and they actually eat more meat on average than the average Japanese person, so it's like, so they their own results countered their conclusions. And you see that in a lot of studies. That's why I tell people, read the study, don't just read the conclusion, because a lot of the time the conclusion is not supported by their evidence, or is completely contradicted by the evidence. I've seen that before as well. And with Loma Linda, they were saying that these people were living on average 7 years longer than the rest of people in California and America. And they're like, oh, this must be because they're vegetarian. And but if you look at Mormon populations in the same area, they have the exact same longer life expectancy of 7 years on average. And they eat whatever they want to eat, and so they don't have any religious constrictions on their diet. Well, what's a commonality there too? They don't smoke, they don't drink, they're not going around, doing drugs and partying. They're trying to live a clean life. And so, that's obviously a confounding factor, but they don't consider those. In fact, they paper over them in the blue zone study. So the blue zone studies, as you say, is just complete and utter crap. And it's just, you cannot come to the conclusion that they did based on the information that they provided.
So back to Simon answering your question, what I wanted to find was, what are the greatest drivers of long life? And like I said, throw out the blue zone stuff because that was stupid. And it was conflicting. Like I wanted non-conflicting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's only 2 things I found that are drivers of long life that are uncontested in research. And number 1 was high levels of strength and muscularity. Like some said mass, some said strength. And then the other one was low levels of body fat. Well, if you want to be as strong and as lean as possible, there's only one thing you should be eating, and that's animal protein.
No.
Just so to me, the nutrition story began and ended right there. I didn't need to read a single nutrition study to understand exactly what we should be eating, because I just took a step backwards to where like people aren't screwing with the data, like Kraft Foods isn't funding different groups to fraudulently say that crackers and cookies are really good for you.
Yeah.
What
We
they
used,
did.
we used to get these from the cookie tree, back at the Paleolithic era.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's cool. So how long have you been doing this now for?
About 95% strict carnivore for about 4 years.
Nice.
And then it was probably like maybe 85% carnivore before that for about 10 years.
Yeah. Nice.
So I have no complications. I have no issues. I'm not low in any vitamins. Not a deficiency, nothing.
Yeah.
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 And John, what does it look like for you? Like, what do you eat? Do you love eating steaks? Do you eat 2 meals a day? How does everything work for you?
So I've experimented with the 1 meal a day thing, 2 meals a day, and then going extended fasting. I'm a big fan. Like,
yeah, you like the fasting. I've seen that.
Yeah, like you can drop body, especially dry fasting. Like if you try dry fasting, you'll never go back.
So no water, literally no water.
No water, no food for like multiple days. So I've done 72 hours. I've done that maybe 8 times. 72 hours, no food, no water. That takes some focus.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like when you catch yourself daydreaming about a sip of water,
That's
like, wow, like how did I get here? Like, yeah, but there's great research. There's a German study and a Greek study that people went 5 days, no food, no water, no complications whatsoever. They urinated the same amount every day.
I heard you say that in another podcast. That's unbelievable. How can that be possible?
Like water. They're taking the water out of their fat cells, which is destroying their fat cells. So, like you can't have, unless you're a really morbidly obese person, you can't lose a pound of body fat a day. This is actually a commonly searched for thing. Can I lose a pound of body fat a day? Okay. Well, there's 3,000,
like cramming for an exam.
Like, right. Or, somebody has, a wedding they're getting ready for, and shit, I'm 2 weeks away and I've got 14 pounds to lose. So if I can just lose a pound a day. Right. And so like, you can't do that with calorie restriction, because there's 3,500 calories in a pound of body fat. And most people are not big enough so they can have that much of a calorie deficit. Most people's basal metabolic rate plus activity is only 2,500. Okay. So you can never get there. However, in the dry fasting studies, 2 of them, both of them went for 5 days. They lost more than 1 kilo per day.
Wow.
So yeah, like 2.5 pounds per day. Now, even in that stayed even after rehydration. They actually lost more.
I was going to ask. Yeah.
But then the rehydration process, your weight drops way down. Like I'll go 3 days and, my body weight's down 14 pounds, but then, maybe 9 of it or 8 of it come back quickly, but the rest of it, body fat is just gone.
Yeah. How does that affect musculature as well? Are you losing any muscle mass as well, or dehydrating the muscles out?
No, and I've confirmed that with DEXA scans.
Yeah.
Now, DEXA scans are ugly because you can take a DEXA scan, drink 32 ounces of water, and it'll tell you gained a pound of muscle. So you got to keep that in mind. So when you do your baseline, you have to be absolutely dehydrated.
Right.
Okay.
And then you rehydrate, then do your dry fast.
Right.
And again. So
yeah,
that's how you can really tell.
So John, at what point on a fast do you think you'd start to lose muscle, or how do you sort of see that working, Anthony?
Well, if you're truly fasting, I mean, there's people out there that are doing fasting mimicking, which is just bullshit. They're just a low calorie diet. Yeah, I see these like fasting bars, and they're made out of like seeds and nuts.
Fasting bars, seriously.
Yeah, someone needs to be set on fire for that.
Another gimmick.
Well,
Like, it's not fasting if you're eating whatever this is, and which, by the way, like the ingredients are like chocolate, caramel, nuts, seeds.
And Anthony talks about this a lot, but it just makes
like,
it makes you more hungry.
of course,
Yeah.
yeah, because glucose. You go back to glucose metabolism, you just go nuts. Like, oh my god, I need to eat something. So, true fasting keeps growth hormone really high. Now, growth hormone is not anabolic, but it is an anti-catabolic. So you don't, if you're truly fasting, you don't lose muscle.
Yeah.
If you try and get away with like just having half a sandwich or something, then you're gonna lose muscle because your body's trying to find a new homeostasis at that point. It's like, oh, we're not able to get calories like we used to, so we got to adjust for this much lower number. So that's the cortisol response, and so you get rid of muscle and preserve body fat, which is why like bodybuilders who diet for shows, they are massively struggling against their own biochemistry, their own hormones. And, you know, they lose so much muscle before a show. Like, yeah, these people are impressive when they show up at their show, but they're way more impressive off season. And it's because the practice of a bodybuilder's dieting before a show, with rare exception, is really not scientifically what you should be doing. Now, I'm not a bodybuilder, never claimed to be, don't really know much about it. Would never advise somebody who came to me and said, hey, can you help me prepare for bodybuilding show? Like, there's so much stuff I don't know about that, like pyramid of drugs that go along with that. I don't have a clue. So I wouldn't advise somebody on that. But the way they diet down, like the massive calorie restriction, tiny meals, it's just misery, and they're losing muscle and
Torture.
Yeah, that was what Professor Ben Bickman from BYU said when I spoke to him. He said that as long as you're not like hectic and emaciated, and you're still producing ketones, like you actually can't lose muscle mass. So your body is getting that energy from the ketones that you're burning from your fat cells, and until you run out of that, you actually won't burn your musculature. So that makes sense from what you're saying, and it's funny, there are these studies talking about fasting mimicking diets, and this has similar effects to fasting as well. So now that's funny that they're now marketing this as a fasting mimicking bars and things like that. That's just and it's a bit absurd. I mean, all fasting mimicking diet is a keto diet. You're supposed to be limited.
Keto and low calorie.
Yeah. So it's like, and so a fasting mimicking bar with sugar and chocolate and stuff like that, I'm sure that's not even doing that, because
it screws up ketosis. Like, once you do that, I mean, these bars aren't like 20 calories.
Yeah.
There's a study out there somewhere that, like, in a very obscure way, mentions that if you have less than 50 calories, that it actually won't break your fast, which from a homeostasis perspective, it makes sense. It's not like the body's going to be like, well, we got 50 calories, so that's just what we're getting today. That's normal. Like, no, it won't do that. So like there is some overarching logic that your body applies.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I was going to say too, so hopping on to the X3 bar, I've been using this for a couple of weeks now, and I've just decided, because I bought it last year, and I was pretty sick of like the gyms getting shut down and all the different sorts of whatever. I'm like, and I actually was looking at this when the gyms first shut down. It was like, okay, I need something in my house. Like, normally when I was in Seattle, I had a gym set up in my house, and then I was in Perth, and it was like a year later, and everything was shut down. I was pissed. I was livid because I had like everything set up exactly the way I wanted it there, and I had no access. And so I actually looked into it at that time, and ended up just sort of trying it out last year, but just infrequently. It wasn't something that I always did. I certainly saw that You know, it was a difficult workout. You could actually really push yourself, and I really like that.
Hardest workout of your life.
It is, and it's
Yeah.
you know,
That's
because
what Dr. Baker started saying. It's like, I've never had a hard. I mean, the guy holds like world records in the deadlift, and he says that my system is the hardest workout he's ever had. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
dude, really? I don't know if that's helping me out.
yeah,
Sales went through the roof after he said that.
yeah,
Because a lot of people see a bar and bands and they're like, oh, that's weak. You know, I'm stronger than that. But then Dr. Baker's telling him, oh no, my deadlift on X3 is 750 pounds.
yeah,
And they're like, that thing holds 750 pounds in it. And I can put it in a backpack when I'm done.
yeah,
Okay. So apparently I was confused.
yeah.
So so they get it because of, you know, what he said. And so it was certainly not the way I thought I should ever describe it, but now I describe it like that. Yeah, it is the hardest workout you'll ever do. It allows you to train much further than weights can.
Yeah.
Because you're just going to a deeper level of fatigue, like the diminishing range. So like when I'm doing a chest press movement like this is my first repetition, I'm holding 550 pounds. So it's 550 pounds here, about 300 here, about 100 here. So I'm going through this range of motion and it's super taxing at the top. As soon as I can't get here, well, now I'm doing shorter repetitions. Until I can't do that anymore. And then my last couple repetitions are just right here in the bottom. Yeah. So it fully exhausts every muscle fiber you have, which is something you can never, ever do with a weight.
Yeah. And I certainly noticed that, and pushing yourself to that extent, you get a very, very deep burn. And it's hard though, you know, because you have to have some like mental fortitude because it hurts, you know. So you're going and you're doing this and you get to the point that a lot of people do, and they're like, oh well, that's starting to hurt, and like, oh, I think that's good enough. And you know, the good enough guys, and then like, no, I'm going to go until, you know, I'm bleeding out of my eyes, guys. You know, that's really the difference. And so I've noticed that with this, I'm able to do that. And I think it is good. You know, I used it infrequently before just because, you know, I wasn't in the habit of using it. And I just said, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to do it just 30 days, every single day. I'm just going to do it, you know, come what may. And I started, you know, videoing this and putting it up. And I haven't been as consistent putting them up, but I'm still videoing them, so they'll be out. But it was actually really good that I did that, because it made me like not you know, be a little bitch.
Yeah,
like
you're accountable.
And so
we're all waiting for the update.
Yeah, that's it. So I'm doing this thing. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, oh, it's really like, that's killing me. And I'm like, oh, I'm on camera. And you see me sometimes look at the camera. I'm like, shit, that's there. Like, all right, let's just like keep going. I notice that like when I do that, and I really go to the point where I'm just kind of just eking out just like, you know, half an inch sort of things at the end. It is absolutely, you know, great workout. I really noticed that. And so, you know, one question I did have though, obviously, you know, you feel burnt out on the one set, but you know, is there an advantage to like maybe later in the day coming back, or like giving a rest and like trying to do further sets, or is that not really advantageous?
No, you really want to stimulate and then let protein synthesis happen. It's like, you know, like you got a lot of sun in Australia. How many sets do you need to do in the sunlight to get a tan?
Yeah.
Hopefully
one.
Yeah. Go out once, and then that's it.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you go out multiple times, you get blisters.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You need to heal first before you go out and give it another crack.
Right. And the same thing happens to muscle. Like, you've seen micro tears in muscle, and falsely we thought that had something to do with growth. Muscle damage is inversely related to growth. So you want the muscle to be fatigued, but not damaged.
Interesting.
And it is the multiple sets and also the loading in the weaker range of motion that causes that damage. You know, and also they noticed that marathon runners had more damaged quadriceps than people who would compete at the squat. And I'm like, well, then how come they're not bigger? Well, because damage has nothing to do with growth. Inversely related. The more damage you have, the less you grow.
Okay. So you tax it to the maximum extent and then leave it alone.
24
Yeah,
hours?
fast food,
Or-
like all out one set with the diminishing range and the constant tension. And then when you're done, you're done. You got 48 hours before you hit that body part again. And protein synthesis is usually concluded within 36 hours.
Okay.
You just want to make sure that all the growth happens and then you stimulate again.
So would you recommend taking that 36-hour break, or so you want to gap, so like 48 hours, so you like,
Yeah, waiting 48 hours fits a lot better on a calendar than waiting
Yeah.
36 hours, because you don't
Yeah.
want to have to get up in the middle of the night to do like your chest presses. So don't try and time it for 36.
Mm.
Yeah.
Also, 36 was the average. So some people
Right.
may be a little longer, some people may be a little shorter. So, wait 48 hours, and then you can have 3 growth periods per week.
Yeah.
Because you got to think about it, you stimulate, and then you're going to grow more than you will from a regular weightlifting day, but you get 3 of those growth periods every week because you're splitting the body 2 ways and you have 6 workouts.
Yeah. Like that's I'm certainly interested. I tried taking like my weights before, and I really should have done measured chest and everything like that, but mostly I think it's just how I feel. And my repetitions are like steadily going up. Even on alternate days, I'm getting better, I'm feeling better. I've also noticed that something that I've seen you talk about before. Obviously, there's no sort of ab component to it, but cores are stabilization muscles. You need those stabilization muscles.
You get your core. Yeah.
And I've definitely noticed that as well, that like it's something that you really have to have a lot of control, and so that comes a lot of the stabilization muscles in your core and elsewhere that force you to keep this under control, because it's trying to move on you, and so you have to be able to control the weight and the tension in weird angles that your body's not necessarily used to, and you have to learn that and incorporate that.
Should be, but for some people. Well, I think also the last 20 years have given us a lot of machine training, which means we lack the stabilization firing to keep like a weight balanced over our heads. Like we need to build that back. People who are like, well, this never happens on my machine presses. Also, those are like trying to get a tan with candles. Like you're not doing it. Like it's not giving you what you think it's giving you.
Definitely. And you have I have a short bar, just a normal bar as well. Is there an ad?
That's the better one.
Sorry?
That's the better one.
This is the better one.
The short one's better.
Well, it's the standard. Like it's not, well, here it is. It's 20 inches wide.
Mm-hmm.
The wider, so people like the wider bar because they do a wide grip like chest press, but that's like the people who do a sumo squat. They're basically just cheating while screwing up their hip joint. Sumo squat really screws up your hip joint. I think hip joint surgeries in the United Kingdom are up 700% because of what they call the CrossFit squat, which is really just a sumo squat, same sumo deadlift, same thing. So a wide grip, you have a shorter distance. If I grab out here, I only have to go maybe a foot off my chest to complete the repetition, which seems like it's easier, but it's so incorrect for joints. And hey, if you're in a competition and the competition allows things that are damaging to the body so that you can break the record or whatever, which makes me sort of question some of the rules in powerlifting. But it allows for that. So, that's that sport. So, okay. That doesn't mean it's what we should be doing. The people who want to take a wide grip, I say, the wide grip's for your ego. It is not going to, it's going to stimulate less growth. Now so many people wanted a long bar, and hey, there were guys there's a lot of guys in the NBA that use X3, and they were just screaming for the long bar. I kind of get it with them. What's a wide grip to me would not be a wide grip for Andre Drummond, who plays for the Pistons, who is almost 7 feet tall.
Yeah, wow.
It's huge. Like, so yeah, and it's like that bar I just showed you looks really tiny on him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but he doesn't even grab out to the ends of that bar. He kind of grabs it, more like in the middle.
Yeah. So is there a proper hand placement? So when I'm doing these things, I find that my hands are actually inside my shoulders. Is that okay, or do you want it like a little wider out as well? Like, that's what I was thinking.
Like for the chest press, I'm always grabbing on the, kind of on the outside of the knurling, like right here, which is about matches my shoulders.
Okay.
That's the most efficient place.
Okay.
Also, remember, I mean, to get the most involvement in the pectoral, like you want the humerus bone to come as close to the midline as possible.
Yeah.
Well, if you're out here, that's the opposite of that. You have less pectoral involved. So a wide grip chest press is pretty much all tricep anyway.
Yeah.
So the closer your hands come together, the more squeeze you're actually getting into the pectorals. You're activating more of the pectorals.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And then for
bar, like I'll never be photographed using the long bar. People are like, oh, well, show us how to use it. And I'm like, you make a video.
Yeah.
Because it was one of those things where like people wanted it so bad. And I told them, no, you don't want this. And they insisted, like, no, we do. You want to listen to your customers, but you also want them to succeed.
Yeah.
And so it's like a balance. So I came out with a long bar, and there's some giant people who love it. There are some ego lifters who love it. And, I'll just have to pray for them later. But then there's other people who are like, God damn it, you were right. This thing is just not as good as the original. It's great. And of course, you can get the longer bar and still grab it in the middle.
Right.
It's not like you're not allowed to do that. So, but people were like, yeah, I got it. And like, you were right. The original was better.
Okay.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. So when people are starting out with the XP3 bar, or they're trying this out, what are some, are there any sort of beginner tips or pitfalls or anything like that people generally run up against that can be helpful to sort of
Yeah, I tell people, watch the videos. We send you a link.
Okay.
Watch the instructional videos. It's a very simple and elegant product, but don't just pull it out of the box and see what you can figure out on your own.
Typical men, I can imagine. To read the instructions. Yeah. Who would do that? I would never do that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's true of just.
So you got to actually watch the videos. Yeah.
You got to watch. And to get the best out of it, there's some people who just pull it out of the box and looked at there's like a card that shows you the pictures of like, the up and down position of a squat and stuff like that. And they'll try and figure it out from there, and they'll, maybe get 85% proficient, but they'll miss some stuff that's mentioned in the video. So I tell people, like, really watch those videos. Like, and you don't need to watch them all the time because you commit them to memory. It's like probably collectively like 20 minutes of video for like the whole thing. Like everything you need to know about your exercise will be given you in 20 minutes. So take the 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't. Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. All right, Anthony, have you got any more questions, or do you want to?
I think that's yeah. No, I think that's covered all of it. Yeah.
Anthony, thanks for getting up this early in the morning.
Yeah, I know that is good of Anthony. 6 a.m. in Perth. He does it regularly.
I think our last one, either it was super late in my day or super early in my day. I don't remember which.
I think it was the other way around. Yeah, I think maybe it was sort of.
Yeah, it was a little later for you in the day, but it was like way late for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Hey, Australia and the United States do not have accommodating time.
No. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we were able to figure it out though.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind getting up a bit early, and it's not a big deal. I'm up stupid early normally anyway, so that's it's good for me because I get this done before I go into work, and and then I'm able, not the other side of it is like, especially with like West Coast time, it's like midnight before anybody's really able to hop on, for me, because like midnight is like 9 a.m. on the West Coast, so midnight for me and 9 a.m. on the West Coast, so it's probably a bit easier for me to get up a bit earlier. So
John, where are you based in the States?
In California.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a place where it's beautiful, but we pay too much in taxes for
from what I've heard. Yeah,
my God,
yeah, it's a small part. We have
expensive place to live.
Yeah, and unfortunately, California voters don't seem to be getting any smarter, because they seem to keep voting for the same people who are ruining the state, and then they complain that the state is being ruined.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing, that they you vote for policies that don't really help, and then you complain about the effects of that policy, and then you keep voting for that policy.
The same people who are writing stupid legislation, right?
Or then go to other states, that don't have those problems.
Californians move to other states and then screw those other states up by voting to ruin their state. And then they're like, "Oh, what happened?"
Yeah.
So now are you doing intermittent fasting, or you're doing a 72-hour fast at the moment?
Yeah. So my newer, what I'm doing is I'm building sort of levels, like when you first, like, this is meant for just the average person. Like, the average person doesn't know anything about dieting. Maybe they've tried all the diets, maybe they haven't tried any. Or, they have a South Beach diet book that they found at a garage sale for a penny, which would be overpriced. But, they buy the book and they read it, and, they're like, okay, so, I need high fat and high carbohydrates, and then I'll lose all the weight I want. So, whoa, pizza's good for me, like that kind of thing.
Right.
Like they've had nothing but failure, which it's really easy to find people who've had nothing but failure when it comes to their nutrition. So I want to have, different steps. Like, you can't rearrange their life overnight unless they've like just coming off a heart attack or something like that. Those people are great listeners.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. But they have to have that moment, which sucks. I'd rather catch people beforehand.
Yeah.
So to catch people beforehand, what I'm trying to do is just come up with like different recommendations, where the first one is just cut out all processed foods. Just anything with a package, like, unless it grew on a tree, or, it would run away if you stabbed it in the ass.
Yeah.
Those are the only two things you should be eating.
Yeah.
Anything else, it's not food. And so people are like, okay, like, I can still eat like apples because I like apples. Sure. Still have that stuff, way better than the stuff in the packages. So that's level one. And then, level two, you might do some 1 meal a day kind of things. And then the problem with fasting is that for it to really be effective, you got to go all the way.
Okay.
And, when you do multi-days, and especially dry,
Okay.
like, because when you're dry fasted, you're pulling metabolic water out of fat cells. Fat cells are only 10% water.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when you start to dry fast is, you feel like thirsty and hungry and a little weak. And then all of a sudden, and you'll know the moment, all of a sudden, when that first fat cell bursts, and you've got all that, you would just see your triglycerides would be low, everything would be low, and you'd see your LDL go way the fuck up. By the way, the highest LDLs recorded are from people who are fasting.
Okay.
So that's like saying LDL is bad is like saying losing body fat is bad for you.
Yeah.
We know the opposite to be true. So it's just like, I wish I had been around 20 years ago when LDLs were vilified. It's just like, but that's how we lose body fat. So I'm pretty sure that it's not the culprit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, your LDL skyrocket, and you get energy and focus, because it's faster than just ketone bodies. Like, you're actually destroying fat cells, which, by the way, caloric restriction can never do. It just shrinks fat cells and then expands them when you start eating again. You're actually destroying them in dry fasting.
Yeah. Is that only dry fasting, or is that can you do that with wet fasting, or does it have to be sort of a state of sort of mild dehydration to go along with it?
As far as we know.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's your body's. So I haven't had any liquid. And I'll send you the study after. There's 2 studies, they're great, where people went 5 days no food, no water. And even if you're not a scientific person, I encourage you to read these studies and try and understand them, because it's kind of hilarious that, you know, it goes so far against what we've been told. You know, you need 8 glasses of water a day. You know where that came from? Gatorade. That's where. Yeah. Gatorade came up with that. And of course, the bottled water companies just jumped on that horse and rode it right into the ground. Like, yeah, you need 8 glasses of water a day. Yeah, no study ever found that. In fact, the only thing that's ever been studied about hydration was in 1943. That's how interested the medical community is in hydration.
Yeah.
Though they probably should consult with some anesthesiologists, because they have some strong feelings on this. You do not want to do anesthesiology on a dehydrated person. However, the dehydration is quick, because what happens is you get dehydrated and then you start tapping metabolic water. You're not dehydrated anymore.
Right.
So in this study, the people that were on the 5th day of no food, no water, they were urinating the same amount of urine.
Okay.
As day 1.
Yeah.
Where'd the water come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How is your body still? So even though you are, quote, a little dehydrated, but you're not like, you know, if you do this, you know, sometimes you just like, you know, reach to scratch the back of your head and your bicep just knots right up, you know, like when you're that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Never happens. So you're hydrated enough where you don't get any cramping or anything like that. No headaches. And you're fine. And you still produce the same amount of urine. And of course, like, you know, at some point you're like a couple days in, you're like, where is it coming from? It's coming from the metabolic water.
That's interesting. Yeah. Like,
awesome.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Like I've never tried dry fasting. It would be interesting to sort of check it out. I've noticed in patients that just fasting in general, you know, could you know might accelerate things a bit if they're really looking for, you know, rapid weight loss. But one of the nice things about carnivore diet is you don't have to. You know, I think that your body can sort of regulate this as well, and you will automatically go into, you can call it a caloric deficit if you want to, but your body is just telling you don't need as much food if you're just eating, you know, carnivore. And
right, when you eat carnivore, you actually feel full.
Yeah,
you know, you eat like a steak, and you know, and I did do a little over a year 100% carnivore. Like I didn't have anything. Like I wouldn't even chew sugar-free gum. Actually, I'd never chew sugar-free gum. It's got a chemical shitstorm. But I mean, it just like 0 went in me except for animal protein and water.
Yeah.
And I felt dynamite. I did get a little bit of pushback when I told people they should really do exactly what I'm doing. And man, there were some people that were like, I just can't. And you know, I tell them things like, if you use the word can't, you know, you need to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Do you really want to be one of those can't people?
Yeah.
Well, like put it back on them, like, you know, saying like, hey, you want to wear the shirt that says a fucking loser?
Yeah.
No, you don't. So don't be a fucking loser and just try it. Because if you try it, it's really not that tough.
Yeah. It was
you know, and I feel the same way about fasting. But I think part of, you know, like, how about this? Like physicians have trouble with compliance when they just prescribe a pill.
Yeah.
People forget. Or they're lazy, or they lose their bottle, or they get it confused with their pet's medication. So they just go, fuck it, throw all the pills away.
Yeah.
So osteoporosis was what got me into life sciences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Half of the reason the British government was helpful when, like, it was hosted clinical trials that happened at the University of East London and the Stratford Village Surgery. Why was the NHS, the government, the British government, so, I mean, they went way out of their way to be helpful to me. And I was like, man, this is a huge bureaucracy. Like, what?
Yeah.
Why would they be so helpful? And finally, I met up with one of the top researchers in the country on osteoporosis, and he said, our biggest problem is compliance.
Right.
People go and use your medical device, but they won't remember to take a pill.
Right.
He says, we don't know what to do. Like
Yeah.
at this point, bisphosphonate drugs are, the patents have all run out. So there's, they're cheap.
Yeah.
People won't take them. They don't, and they also feel awful after they take them, so they put it off. And that's how it like starts, because there's a lot of side effects of those. But they come and use the osteogenic loading equipment, no problem. Love it. They feel great. They feel energized after they do it, which I'm sure is no surprise to you.
Yeah.
But it's a surprise to them because most of these people have never exercised a day in their life.
Yeah.
And they also have metabolic dysfunction, and they come and they actually do a real exercise intervention. It's more just like bone compression. I mean, the movement is like from here to here, like millimeters of movement of the body, but tremendous forces, thousands of pounds loaded through the body. And all in an effort of bone compression to stimulate the bone matrix, to pull in minerals, to recalcify, make the bone more powerful. Yeah, that's like people love doing it, and that's why they were so accommodating. Like we just like people want to do your thing. They don't want to do our thing.
Right.
And that's why they're helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of cool, because you kind of wonder, like, is there a big conspiracy? Or the pharma company's gonna pay the institutions to bury my technology? Hell no.
Yeah.
Like the medical community actually does want to help people.
No, that's good. Yeah, and it's you have to sort of wonder if there's a large government bureaucracy that's actually helping you. Like, oh, am I on the wrong side of this? Like,
I would say, like, I mean, in our more recent times, I would say our governments are not on our side when it comes to health. They're doing favors for their donors and whatever else. Like, we probably can't get into the weeds on that one, but there's a lot of complications revolving around some medications that we're just not even allowed to discuss.
Yeah. Well,
if you're not allowed to discuss it, there's something being hidden from you.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah. If you have to shut down the conversation, obviously,
there's massive deception going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You can't even discuss it. There was Ivor Guyver, who's a Nobel Prize winner for his work on superconductors. And he actually gave up his seat on the American Physical Society, and because they were saying they came out very dogmatically about something. He said, "This is settled science. We will broach no discussion on this." And he just said, and it's not, this was a previous no touch issue, and he said that,
like statins 20 years ago.
Well, like statins, but more to do with the environment and climate change and things like that. They basically said the Physical Society said, this is settled science, and that anthropogenic climate change is what it said it is, and there's no nuance, there's no discussion at all that to be had. This is it.
That's not science.
No, exactly, and so
science is questioning everything.
Exactly,
at all times.
Yeah, and so he just gave up his seat on the Physical Society, and he said that this is a society that still to this day argues over the weight of a proton, and yet you're not allowed to even discuss this other thing. That's ridiculous. If you can argue on the weight of a proton and be like, no, that's bullshit, then you can argue about anything. So
you ever been to one of their parties?
The Physical Society? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I haven't, not personally.
Yeah, me neither. It sounds like a terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah. Like, weight of a proton. Let me get my notepad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I bet the bartenders at their parties are like, oh man, I've got the worst headache from hearing these people.
Yeah, probably. So you were doing a carnivore diet for a while, and obviously, when you're working with people, you're trying to just find a good fit for them. But what
something that we can plan on? It's just compliance.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do know there are people that will go 100% carnivore, and I will. I mean, like when I redo all my nutrition recommendations, that's going to be an option that I'm going to promote heavily. But I'd say 10% of the people are willing to even listen to that. And then, the other 90%, it's sad because they're really, it's really their self-doubt. It's not like they think it's not safe or something like that. They might say that, but there's a lot of doubt. Like they like eating and they're like, God, going days without eating, how would I do that? Well, when you're not carbohydrate addicted, you don't think about eating. You talk about fasting to the average carnivore and they're like, yeah, I could probably go a couple of days with no food. Cool. I'll try that. Yeah. Like when you try it, no sweat. But when somebody who eats a lot of carbohydrates tries it, a fucking misery.
Yeah.
Absolute misery. Especially like the first 12 hours.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing too. It's like, you were saying that like one of the most heavily searched for phrases is, how to lose weight without changing my diet. It's like, how the hell do you think you're going to do that?
Yeah. And anyone who would search for that is crazy. Like your diet is why you're fat. Like if you're overweight, that's why. It's what you've been putting in your mouth.
Yeah.
And to think that there's some way where you wouldn't change that is insane.
Well, it's like looking up, how to, beat cocaine addiction without stopping cocaine use.
There we go.
And so,
turns out sugar is more addictive than cocaine. There's a great study on that.
Yeah. I saw one Dr. Lustig from UCSF put out where they're looking at MRIs and, you hit a dopamine hit surge to the addiction centers of your brain. And there's a study using MRIs, and you would give like a amphetamine dose to people that had control groups. So like you or I who wouldn't consume any of these sorts of things. Those areas would light up, and then someone who was addicted to methamphetamines, who had killed off a lot of these parts of their brain, had this sort of barely twinkle in the same areas. But then people who were metabolically unwell, who were sugar addicted, they had the same barely twinkle. So it was addictive in the same way as cocaine, heroin, or methamphetamines, and it killed the same areas of the brain as methamphetamines to the same extent as methamphetamines, which is absolutely terrifying. There was it's like a medical director in Amsterdam of all places, and he said that sugar was the worst drug on earth. This is people with the red light district who probably know a few things about drugs, and he's saying this is the worst drug on earth. I would probably agree with that, just for the fact that it's in everything and we don't realize it's as bad as it is.
Yeah.
And there was you mentioned there was another study looking at fructose and cocaine, things like that. Was that a different study?
We may be referencing the same thing. I listened. So I lived in the People's Republic of San Francisco for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I got to see Lustig a couple times.
Nice. Yeah. No, he's a good dude.
The guy's just like a treasure to society. I don't think he'll be appreciated. I feel like maybe in 20 years, veganism will be in the same category as anorexia and bulimia. It's just, instead of like anorexics and bulimics, they think they're healthy too.
Right.
Like, I like to point that out to people. So when they're like, oh, that's outrageous, you would say that. Talk to a bulimic. They think they're the healthiest people. And, just because their problem is their view of themselves in the mirror, whereas I think a vegan's problem is they surround themselves with other people who fit into their subculture, which just becomes kind of an information echo chamber. When subject probably of a book I'll write years from now on subcultures, like people really, you notice how like you see like a teenager and all of a sudden they become like emo.
Yeah.
So they dress like their depressed friends. They all get the same haircuts. They all use the same, I don't know, just everything. They're up each other's asses. They're just like clones of each other.
Mm-hmm.
People really like being part of a subculture, and when you see these, overweight purple hair ladies at the grocery store who are like bitching about everything. You know, I need to see a manager sort of thing. And, you know, like, I don't think that guy should be allowed to park in the parking lot that has a Trump sticker on the back of his car. You know, like, okay, lady, you know, like that, like it's a subculture. They fall into it and they do every little thing the same. And it makes me think that there's some desire for a majority of the population, I think it's the lower intelligence part of the population, to save them from having to think about things. They join a subculture. Then they don't have anything to think about at all. They just do. You know, like when you join a biker gang, pretty much the only t-shirt you're going to own is going to say Harley Davidson on it.
Yeah.
Right. Or your gang name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like, so you don't have to worry about shirts anymore. You don't have to worry about what your transportation is, because there's always going to be some bike. You know, like they do that so they can just go, fuck everything else. I'm just following these guys, and whatever collective decision we make, you know, whether it's to do, you know, be vegan or eat meat or all get the vaccine or what, you know, it's like, we're all going to be the same.
Yeah.
So no thinking.
Yeah.
And in now with social media, it's almost like that echo chamber is amplified, because social media doesn't have us connect with people with differing opinions. Typically, it connects us with people that have the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I have conservative friends that are like, I don't see all this like Twitter outrage over like just today. Like, I don't see it. Like, nobody seems angry about this. And I'm like, you don't have a single liberal friend.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like, you designed it so that you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, I know who this guy's, you know, Facebook friends are and Instagram friends are, and they're all his, you know, NRA buddies.
Yeah.
So, okay, well,
Yeah.
you do you. Like, you have no idea what people are saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. You sort of sit in your own bubble, and you don't get outside of that. There was a story about that. There was like someone from, you know, his New York Society, like New York Times sort of things, and you know, there was some election at some point, and the other people that they were going against were, you know, personally were rooting against, ended up winning like massively, or maybe it was like Reagan or something like that. You know, we had this landslide, you know, 48 states, and they just said, how could he possibly have won? I don't know anyone who voted for him. It's like,
yeah, I'm sure you don't.
yeah. And but that shows just how isolated people can become, and that, you know, that was before social media as well.
Before social media, it's worse now.
Yeah,
way worse now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I was going to say, so what do you do now? Oh, sorry, go on.
Well, I actually had a question for you.
Yeah.
In you know, like, different guys who promote carnivore just have different answers to this question, but is there ever a point where you get to where you think carnivore has just, like, you need a break from it? Like, as I hear that, like, people say, oh, keto only works for a certain period of time. I'll say, well, I don't know about that. I haven't seen that study, but I know calorie restriction only works for a certain period of time because you have a metabolic adaptation. Ketosis is a system of the body.
Yeah.
And like, I've never heard about it failing over a period of time for any particular reason. And I haven't been able to find the research. I just get the question a lot. And I think it's just some vegan bullshit that somebody made up.
Yeah.
Does this ever happen to you? Like, I was 100% carnivore for a whole year. Never, I mean, I was the leanest I've ever been. I'm stronger now, but you know, I was stronger than I had ever been.
Yeah.
Up to that point. So I'm just curious, like, do you find anything with that?
No, for me, no. I mean, I've been doing this solidly for 5 years. I was doing it solidly for 5 years in, you know, early 20s. And I've just never, ever felt better in my entire life. I've never had an issue with that. You know, I think, you know, seeing some that, you know, Professor Bart Kay, you know, he was talking about sort of this evolution of, you know, different sort of carnivore, you know, gurus or influencers or whatever, doctors. who are now saying that, oh, actually you can't survive without carbohydrates. You have to intake carbohydrates, which, you know, we know from biochemistry background, and they shouldn't really know because they've taken biochemistry. You don't need that. You know, you will make all the carbohydrates and so forth that you need. But they were having problems after about a year, and they were having hormonal issues and electrolyte issues and whatever. And they decided, because they looked at a small sort of mechanistic study, saying, oh, look at there's this little pathway and response in your kidneys, and this has something to do with your microtubules and resorbing electrolytes, and that's what it is. I don't have enough carbohydrates. Well, first of all, you have carbohydrates. Your blood sugar is where it's supposed to be, and you have glycogen. And so if you needed carbohydrates to do, to make this function properly, it's already there. But they were saying that must be it. And so they started incorporating, sugar, actually.
Fruit or whatever.
Yeah, just drinking orange juice and eating honey and fruit. And that was something that they thought was good for them, forgetting to realize that there are people like myself, like Dr. Baker, like countless other people who have not only been doing this for several years, but several decades, and then entire populations who have been doing this generationally, and they have never in their life consumed carbohydrates, some of these people. And that's something that's well recognized by various scientific and medical institutions, saying that the requirement of carbohydrates, a lifelong requirement for carbohydrates, is 0. That is a well-established fact. And so,
still in the nutrition guide printed by the AMA.
Yeah, and
still there.
Yeah, and so them sort of, so they were doing something differently, obviously. If you're having problems after a year or so that I'm not having, or you weren't having, or Baker wasn't having, or the Inuits never have, well, obviously there's something different going on there. They thought that this was lack of carbohydrates, but we were all lacking carbohydrates, and we were thriving, and he wasn't. So it's something else. It's not the carbohydrates. Maybe they feel better on carbohydrates, but that's going to be an aside. That's not addressing the underlying issues. So no, I don't. Just looking, anthropological data and the fossil record and biologically, I think all the best evidence shows that we really are carnivores as a species. The type of animal that we are biologically is carnivore. And so, eating meat your entire life is not going to cause detriment by definition, because that being our evolved diet, if that is our evolved diet, and I think that evidence strongly supports that. You cannot live generationally in that state without carbohydrates if that's not going to be optimal. If lack of exogenous carbohydrates are going to cause hormonal dysfunction or electrolyte dysfunction, you're going to know about it. And so, if you have the Inuit, and I like using the
it'll also be universal. It'll happen to everybody.
Yeah. And
this is, let me just take one little sidetrack here. The whole everyone is different, find out what's right for you. That's some bullshit that somebody came us marketing.
Yeah.
It's that's excusing the person who just won't, take whatever, or it gives them heartburn or something like that. Everyone is not fucking different. We all have one heart. We have the same skin. It functions the same. It's not like, somebody's skin, they absorb water through it.
Yeah.
It's another thing I saw recently. If you bathe too much, you absorb water through your skin. Oh, really? Pretty sure it's a one-way street and it's out, not in.
And
it's just
soluble shit to go through your skin, first of all.
Right? You get chlorine poisoning every time you went swimming.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those are waffle words that were developed by pharmaceutical companies so that they didn't have to call you a bitch if you didn't want to take their medication. If you didn't like the side effects, it's okay, well, that wasn't right for you.
Yeah.
And because we treat everybody like they're a child in healthcare.
Yeah.
But assuming they're stupid as a child too, which is I think a large problem with healthcare. It's like no one wants to be educated. They just want to be told what to do. Yeah, bullshit. A lot of people do want to be educated.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think it's a bit of it's very condescending. It's just, oh, they just don't understand. They just don't want. It's like, how do you know that?
Dude, there's a video out there. I mean, I copied it. I actually did a screen record. That's how excited I was.
Yeah.
Bill Maher, who is somebody I normally don't really care for,
Yeah.
was talking about how misled some people are by some of the medical information that's out there. And he's like, when I think about the medical community, the arrogance of don't question us, we're going to tell you what to do. And he says, well, here's the problem. This is me to the medical community. This is him talking to the medical community. He says, you're wrong a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
And there are drugs that get approved by the FDA and then pulled by the FDA.
Yeah.
And we're not allowed to even ask what percentage gets pulled.
Yeah.
There's some groups that estimate it's something like 75% of drugs that have been cleared, been approved, have then later been where's Seldane? That was when we were kids. That was the allergy medication. Well, it causes arrhythmia. So, it just quietly disappeared.
Right.
But, they don't, there's only a press release when they launch a new drug, not when it disappears.
Yeah.
So, right. So he's talking about the irritation that the medical community has with the population when the population starts asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I need to take a vaccine that doesn't stop people from getting it and doesn't stop me from spreading it?
Yeah.
That question.
Yeah.
That's apparently inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's completely appropriate. Why would I take something that has a risk of death, that the two things that we care about it doesn't do either of those things?
Yeah. And or you don't have long-term safety data. I mean, the thing is not being allowed to ask
which we're supposed to be promised via FDA approval, but apparently they can just say it's going to be rush status, so we're not just going to do any of those studies at all.
Yeah. And you should always ask questions. You may, it may be, people may think that's unreasonable, but it's not unreasonable. This is your life. You only have one of them. You don't get a reset button. You can't go back and just say, oh, well, if I had to do it again, I would do X. Well, you don't have that option. So you do need to think critically about things, and you do need to ask questions. And I think that, that's important for people to do that. And I hope that they continue to do that. Just going back to your point about, everyone being different and how sort of absurd that is. I totally agree with that. I talk to people about this, and I start making, my arguments, and they try to sort of go one way or the other. And I said, well, everyone's different. Everyone has a different whatever. And I'm like, no, we're one species, we're the same animal. We're hyper, evolving.
Yeah.
We're not even
pour acid on me, pour acid on you, same result.
Yeah, we're Homo sapiens. We are very, very, closely genetically linked. We've been essentially the same for about 300,000 years genetically. There's been minor adaptations here and there, but as far from just an overall animal perspective, we're the same, and we've been the same for hundreds of thousands of years. And so, they'll just not think about it, but just be, oh, no, because, these things just get repeated and repeated and repeated. And so they think that it has some sort of merit, where in fact, most of these things, it just came multiple examples that you've said, of where these things came from. They came from complete, nonsense or just marketing. And, my argument back to them.
Who said you say a lie 1,000 times, it becomes the truth?
Yeah, Hitler.
Well, no, it's Frederick Goebbels, who was Hitler's propaganda guy.
Propagandist, yeah.
I mean, it's just the
Nazis anyway.
That is applied by, governments all over the world. They just keep the lie going, and then people just start to believe it.
Yeah, make the lie, make it big, and keep repeating it until people believe it. And then the other one was accuse your enemy of what you're doing, so that when they say, oh, actually, you're doing it, you just say that's retaliation. That's people project all the time. But yeah, so my response when people say that, no, everyone's just different, blah, blah, blah. Say, okay, will you point out to me one example in nature where you have two members of the same species who have different optimal diets. I'll wait. You know, I've yet to have someone answer that, you know.
That's a great question. I love that question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it sort of boils it down, because like this doesn't, it wouldn't make sense biologically, you know, especially something so drastically different from being carnivore to being vegan or vegetarian. How is that? You know,
Right.
most animals.
So different.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like you can, you know, there's plenty of instances where, you know, herbivores eat meat. They'll eat like small animals that run by and do just fine. And you know, we can, you know, that has all the, you know,
Yeah, gorillas eat monkeys. Yeah.
yeah, chimpanzees, yeah, as well. And
Yeah, chimps. It's chimps. It'll eat smaller monkeys.
they'll eat more. Yeah, they'll eat more than that. And you know, funny enough, there's a National Geographic picture of like chimps in certain areas, like hunting with spears. It's like, oh, dude, like Planet of the Apes is on its way, and which is pretty
Cool.
funny. Yeah, and you know, so you know, you can, you don't actually need to be especially adapted to eat meat, because meat has all the nutrients that we're trying to make. What are we trying to do when we eat? We're trying to build and maintain meat. So what has all the nutrients that we need? Meat. You have to be specially adapted to get those same nutrients from plants, which is very hard to do. You have to be able to break down cellulose first and foremost if you're eting fibrous plants. And that's not really something that that you're going to see, you know, in a lot of people. So, you know, you have one speed, you know, when I say to people, like, you know, the Inuits live as carnivores, and there's no question of that. These people live up in the North Pole. There are no plants to eat. There is no honey to eat. There is no fruit to eat. So if these were required essential ingredients to life, they would be dead.
They
would
die.
not be there. Exactly. And then, you know, going through the ice ages, which we've done, you know, 5 times in the last few million years, you know, a lot of the world was covered in ice and glaciers. There were no plants to eat. The majority of people did not have access to plants. And this is thought to be why we actually went full carnivore, because we didn't have the ability to eat any plants at that point, and we were already eating animals.
Well, also, so I got something I want to add to that. Like, in nature, like how many vegetables and fruits do you just trip over? Like, right. The vegetables and fruits that we have are genetically engineered to be cheap food. And like, you know, I'll just like, when some of these idiots arguing with me, I just post a picture of Yosemite and I'm like, point to all the vegetables. Like that is something you would see, you know, 1,000 years ago. Just a valley with trees and shit, lakes, rivers. Where are all the vegetables?
Yeah.
Fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
Vegetables were engineered.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, like, before corn became cultivated, it was just like unheard of.
Yeah.
It had to be. You know, and then like there's Baker's joke. It's like, I've never seen a cave painting of a farm with vegetables on it.
Yeah.
Or somebody making salad. A lot of cave paintings of hunting, though.
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah. Yeah, they hunted. That's all they did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and well, that's what people say, you know, we were hunter-gatherers. I'm like, yeah, drop the gatherers part, you know.
Yeah.
But when we had to, you know, sure, you know, and you look at different historical records of, you know, Western cultures going into Australia or North America, they marveled at how they just lived as carnivores. They only ate meat, and they were saying, they're like, you know, even in the northern reaches in, you know, what's now Canada, you know, I was reading excerpts from you know, like a journal, whatever, that some guy wrote at the time, like in the early 1500s, and he was saying that, you know, people were just eating meat, and he was just like, that's pretty crazy, you know, but they were extremely healthy, extremely fit. They looked just physically beautiful. They were just like statuesque, and he said that it was just a bit crazy. He said he understood it for the people, you know, more north, where it's just living in the permafrost all the time. You got to do what you got to do. But he said people more, you know, in the southern sort of New England areas, 3 months out of the year, you know, it defrosted, and they said that surely they could live off the bounty of the land during those 3 months. He said, but they don't. They just ate meat. And there's a lot of records, there and in Australia where people were, again, just blown away by this. And they all said that, when in times of, starvation, they knew which plants they could eat to survive on, and that they could, use medicinally. But when they didn't need them, when they had meat available, they didn't touch it. They just tossed it away. And so people look at, it's like, oh, well, the Native Americans or Native Australians, they ate this and they ate this and they ate this and they ate this, and they would make a broth out of this and a tea out of that, and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. When did they do it? How often did they do it? Was that a daily occurrence? No, that was when they were starving to death, or when they were using it medicinally. And that is what all the original source data shows. There was, every time I find one of these books from like an explorer who's written about their travels, one of these areas, I always pick it up, and I always look through it. And
you should write that up and reference it.
Yeah.
Great for people to read.
Yeah, well, I can probably put them up there. I have some of the books. There's one in particular that I didn't buy the book. I should have. I will probably, but I just took pictures of all the pages so I could like read it later. It's a whole chapter just on the diet of the Native Australians, and they were just marveling how they just only ate meat. And most
I'm sure you've seen the documentary by Pete Evans.
Is that the Magic Pill?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. He goes through the Aboriginal tribes and interviews them. Like, they got all kinds of problems. Like, they're all sick, and then he puts them on an all meat diet, and everything goes away. That's weird.
Yeah, well,
and they're like, this is how our ancestors ate. Like, they know.
Yeah, exactly. I'm in Australia at the moment, and when I first got here, it was expressed to me when you're treating a Native Australian patient, that you basically look at their age and you add 20, because that's how fast they age. That's how quickly they break down. And so if you're treating someone who's 40 years old, you treat them as a 60-year-old, because that's the sort of the, obviously, diseases and issues come in sort of peaks at different points in your life. And so they seem to get these things a lot earlier than other people do. And so they're just breaking down. But that's the cohort that is eating Western diet and living, on this, this crap that's harmful to them, and drinking alcohol and smoking, I'm sure, but the main thing is the food. And I remember, learning as a kid that, I remember I just heard it on the news or something like that. It was just like that studies shown that when eating a Western diet, Native Americans were 4 times as likely to get obesity, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, all these modern diseases. And I remember thinking, like, well, doesn't that mean that the food is causing the disease? Because if they don't eat the food, they don't get the disease. And we eat the food and we get the disease, we just get it at a lower rate. And what was a non-Western diet? What are they eating that we're not, and vice versa? And they didn't, they don't tell you at the time, but it was pure high-fat carnivorism. And that's the same, in Australia. That's what they ate. And so I've spoken to anybody whenever I can, that are in the hospital for different issues, and this comes up, especially with the Native population, and we talk about it, and I just say, like, hey, this is where I'm coming from, and like you say, they all goes like, yeah, that's what we all used to eat when I was a kid, and everyone was lean and strong and healthy, and no one had any of these problems. And he's just like, huh. And and there's still people living like that. There's still people living quite naturally and just eating meat, and kangaroos, same as they always would. I'm sure they're incorporating other things as well. But
good news is, when you're in Australia, kangaroo is cheap.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, well, it's a pest.
It's not that great.
Vermin. Yeah.
They're a nuisance, so everybody wants them blown away.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I had a hell of a time finding kangaroo meat. Like, I was going to nice steakhouses, and I'm like, "Where's your kangaroo?" And they're like, "Not this kind of place."
No.
And so you go to like more like a Texas Roadhouse sort of spot, equivalent in Australia, and then that's where you find the kangaroo, and it's not bad.
Yeah, well, and the thing is too is that you can only find certain cuts of the kangaroo. They'll do like the filet mignon, the back straps of the kangaroo, because people are so obsessed with lean meat down here. That was a big thing when I first got down here. It was just lean, lean, lean. Well, because they really took it to heart that fat and cholesterol are bad for you and they cause heart disease. And, you know, I think that's perfectly reasonable. If you do believe the data, and you do believe the recommendations that cholesterols cause heart disease, and this is bad for you, there's no benefit nutritionally, then yeah, you should cut it out. You know, you should get rid of that crap. And that so as a market and a society, they've really done that pretty well here. The problem is it's dead ass wrong. And so the kangaroos, they just do the backstraps because they're just totally lean. And they're also, most of these things are you know, pretty lean anyway, because they're just living naturally. They're not being like, you know, grain fed or whatever. But apparently the tails have more fat, and that's what the Aboriginals will eat. That's the most prized part. And so they'll take the back straps off. They'll sell it to you know, in the grocery stores, and
the white man, and then they'll sure.
And then they'll take, yeah, and they'll take the tails and they'll actually just ship them out and just give them to Aboriginal communities. Just to have, and then the rest of it they just grind down for dog food. That's how they use kangaroos here. And I've been trying my ass off to get some kangaroo tails, because that's you know, I was talking to some of these guys, and they were like, and they even said, just like, you know, we're talking about meat and just eating animals in general and not eating the other stuff. They said, yeah, and you know what the most important part is? The fat. He said that to me, and I was like, you're damn right it is. And so he was saying, like, that's why we eat the tails. The tails have the most fat. That's the best part. And after the conversation, he's like, yeah, you know, I'm going to talk to my nephew and have him send me some kangaroo tails. I'm gonna get on this, you know. And you know, so yeah, it's good to see. And you see dramatic differences when people go on a carnivore diet, especially when they have these chronic issues, autoimmune issues, diabetes, certainly. But it is most dramatic in these genetic populations who have not had the exposure to agriculture that, you know, that our ancestors would have had. And that's why they're 4 times as likely to get these problems than people of Western descent would be, because, you know, we had, you know, the agricultural revolution 8 to 10,000 years ago. And so we've had sort of some genetic adaptations and protections against these you know, poisonous sort of foods that they don't have. And so they get much more hit by sort of the toxic elements in these foods. And then you take that away, and it just goes away. Yeah. So I found that that's probably one of the strongest tools in my arsenal as a doctor of getting people better and actually just keeping them better. And that's, you know, really what I think is the main thing to do in medicine at all. John, I'm just conscious of the time here. I don't want to take up your whole night.
Yeah, I do need to take off.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully,
fun.
Yeah, an absolute pleasure to meet you and talk with you. I'm glad we were able to set this up. And you know, I would like to, you know, bring you back on some other time and really get into the nitty gritty with your X3 bar and your fitness, you know, program, and really and focus on how people can best address, you know, optimizing muscle growth and athletic performance as well, which is something you're obviously very well versed on. If you're able to.
Nice. Yeah, I'll absolutely do it. This is good.
Awesome.
Well, now that we figured out a good time that works for both of us.
Yeah.
That's because you being in California, you being in Australia.
Yeah.
It was tough, but we figured it out.
Yeah.
And we must thank our friend Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, man. He was like, we really, really wanted us to get together on video. So I appreciate his enthusiasm and commitment and persistence.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
he messaged the both of us a lot.
Yeah.
It was funny because this is it's a really great conversation. Josh was absolutely right.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, you know, he worked for it and pushed for it. It's just like, so you get things done. You just keep plugging away. So yeah,
that's right. Josh. Yeah.
And yeah, definitely. Great. Well,
special thanks to Josh.
Yeah. So what's the best place for people to find you and look at your work and take a look at your
my landing page is drj.com, DOCTOR, the letter J.com. And there's links to everything, YouTube. I do the most on Instagram. I'm starting to do some stuff on TikTok, but I really hate the platform.
So do I. Yeah.
You know, it's like, let me educate you in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
It's just kind of ADD video. And really, there's two types of videos that get a lot of traction. It's girls taking their clothes off and like kind of funny stuff, like cars, you know, rolling down a hill, or, you know, exploding toilets, or just weird humor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I mean, when you're talking about science, it's weird. Like, there are some days where it seems very efficient, and there's other days where it's like, wow, like I'm just wasting my time here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do double all of my posts as Instagram stories, so it's getting some value. But it's funny because I'll have 20,000 views on Instagram, yet I have more followers on TikTok, and some of my videos get like 200.
Weird.
That's an exaggeration. Probably the lowest one is like 800.
Okay.
But it's like, you know, then you see like the girl who just has like 50 videos of her just like running around in her underwear, and it's just like, you know, like each one is like millions of views. Like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
That's what this is here for then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, I'll put those all in the show notes as well, and I'll try to get this up. Yeah, sort of in the next week or so. I know Josh will be. I don't think I could delay it more than that. I think Josh would.
He kills both.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he told me, he's just like, you know, as soon as it's out, you've got to send it to me. I really want to see it. And so maybe I'll just screw with him and just say it's coming out in a month or something like that. Just watch the fireworks and then pepper it out as an early birthday present.
Yeah, don't involve me in that.
Yeah.
He'll send me nasty messages.
Yeah, Dr. Jaquish said, you know, he really didn't want this coming out before June, so, you know, I'm just honoring him.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. Well, John, thanks so much. It's absolutely been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll have you on again, and we'll talk some more about getting buff.
Awesome, Anthony.
Cool.
Have a good night.
You too.
I think most people are really trying hard to do the right thing for themselves, for their health, for their children, for their parents, for their loved ones. And so they're just taking the advice of the authorities and finding out that the authorities are full of crap isn't a nice realization, or realizing that they're corrupt and they've been bribed, misguided.